Saline City Council to order at 7:30 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Present this evening are myself, Mayor Pro Tem Terhar, council members.
Into the mic.
Can't hear you.
Okay, is this better?
No.
No.
The mic.
Is there
Kiss it.
pull it closer? Okay, all right. Thank you, Joan. Present are myself, Mayor Pro Tem Terhar, council members Gearbach, Seo, McClelland, Mitchell, and Dillon. Mayor Marl is absent this evening. Staff present are City Manager Campbell, City Clerk Royal, City Treasurer Bennett. Thank you. Police Chief Rinnick, City Superintendent Engineer Rubel, Wastewater Superintendent Skull, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, and DPW Director Fordyce. All of you present, please, if you haven't already done so, please sign in on the pad at the door, on the table next to the door. Sorry, I'm just shuffling paper. Council members, at your places, you have an amended agenda from the one that was distributed in our packets. The two changes are item number 17107 has been removed. It actually appeared twice on the agenda, so that it was just a duplication, and we've added an additional discussion item, and that is pedestrian safety downtown. You also have a new graphic that goes along with item 17104. That's the new graphic for the special land use request. And finally, you have the latest draft of the city manager performance evaluation, which is also on the discussion portion of the agenda. So may I have are there any other amendments for the agenda?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
It's been moved by Gearbach, seconded by McClellan to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Could I have a motion, please, to excuse the absence of Mayor Morrow?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Dillon, seconded by Councilmember Seo, to excuse the absence of Mayor Morrow. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and motion carries. We move now to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on items that appear on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there citizen comments?
Mary Hess, and I'm speaking on 17109 on staff appointments and contracts, which is wages. Years ago, when I was on council, we had this step and grade. In other words, you hired in on step 1, and then as you progressed each step, you got more money. Well, then you also had, this is for staff, this is non-union people, then you had cost of living on top of the step. Now it appears, and it started years ago, that if you had so many years on with the city, maybe 10 years, you got another $1,000 a year if you were at the top of the grade. And then if you had more years than that, you got $2,000 just for clocking in and clocking out. Plus you got all the vacation weeks because of seniority. I have a problem with $2,000 a year for seniority. I think that when our police department took a very conscious and I think generous small increase in their contract. I would have hoped that staff would have also realized our budget and acted accordingly. There are many that have gotten over $3,000, not many. There are a few that have gotten $3,000 rates. And if you think of $2,000 a year for a couple staff people for the last 10 years, that's a lot of money in abject. I also, as far as you're going to talk about the disposal plant, I think Tetra Tech has done us a rotten job.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there other citizen comments?
Does this work? I am Joan Roth at 186 Anwood Court, Crestwood Subdivision. Councilwoman Terhar, Mr. Campbell, both Mr. Rubels, I believe, Mr. Skull, Mr. Fordyce, and all the city council members, and I'm sure I'm missing other folks. First, I would like to begin by saying that I believe my comments coming reflect the sentiments of many Saline citizens, especially those adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant. It is unbelievable to me that city officials and council members intermittently address the horrendous odor problems, but there's minimal progress in rectifying the 50-year-old problem. The interest waxes and wanes. The two major expansions, enhancements, improvements, equipment, replacements, and additions have all failed with literally many millions of dollars literally down the sewer. I call it Band-Aiding. The daily sewage stink is dreadful. It's clear to me this problem has not been a priority for the city. As a citizen who loves Saline, I request you expedite this process to implement the Webster Environmental Associates' preferred solution that will eliminate, according to them, 99% of the daily rank odors. Start now. Secondly, in reviewing tonight's agenda, I would like to ask what the rationalization or justification is for the two new staff cars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roth. You will have another opportunity to comment during the public hearing on the wastewater treatment plant. Are there other citizen comments? Okay. Then at this time, we move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Move is submitted.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Seo and seconded by Councilmember Mitchell, thank you, to approve the consent agenda as submitted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries. We turn now to the public hearing portion of our agenda. We have two public hearings this evening. The first is the public hearing for the wastewater treatment plant SRF loan. Is there a motion to open the public hearing at 7:39 p.m.?
So moved.
Moved by McClelland,
Second.
seconded by Dillon. The public hearing is now open, and Mr. Brian Rubel and Mr. Brent Bode from Tetra Tech will conduct the opening part of the public hearing. That's required by the state.
Well, good evening. Again, we're here to conduct a hearing which is a requirement for a low-interest loan administered by the state of Michigan to receive public comment on that loan. A couple unusual items here procedurally. We do have a court reporter here. It's a requirement of the loan to have a transcript by a court reporter. So Mindy's preparing the transcript, and that will go into the report that is submitted to the state. The other item is there is a sign-in sheet for the hearing. I did put that at the back table, so we certainly request and Brent, maybe we could get that for the council too, to have them sign that, so that we get the folks in the audience and the council on that sign-in sheet, which has to be submitted with the plan. So a couple changes. And then talking to staff, I was asked maybe to present just a brief summary of odor control, the things that have been done in the past, and how this hearing fits into that, and the subsequent steps that would follow should you proceed to a project. And I'll do that fairly quickly. And then Brent's going to give a more detailed, a very detailed description of the project as proposed, and he has to go through certain steps that the loan requires. So as far as the history goes, I believe the city took step in the fall of last year, retained Webster Environmental from Louisville, Kentucky, to do a study of the odor control. And they did testing in December of last year. It was their first round of testing. And then in March, they presented preliminary findings to the council. And there were several items that I took out of that. Number one, that they investigated for what the sources of the odors were and the strength of the odors. They did testing with instruments and so forth. They learned that one of the city's existing odor scrubbers was not very effective, and learned that the second odor scrubber, although effective, was nearing the end of its life as well and recommended for that to be replaced as well. So that was their preliminary findings. They recommended then a second set of testing be done during warmer weather conditions. Odors are more prevalent during the warmer weather. That's scheduled for July. So it's about 3 weeks from now they're going to be back to do that testing. And that will confirm various assumptions that they made after the first testing. Then in April, in March, we talked about how the construction schedule would occur, the funding options for that, and the state revolving fund loan is the predominant funding mechanism that municipalities use to fund wastewater projects. Not the only one, but it is the most common one. That requires us to be here tonight to do a hearing on the project, get public comment. We prepared a project plan, which is kind of the basis of the hearing. It's a report. I believe you were given a summary of that report. So the plan is a prerequisite. The hearing is a prerequisite for that. And that is due by July 1st each year. We can submit them throughout the year, but they only gather them once a year and then score them, rank them, and then act upon them once a year. So if we miss July 1st of 2017, your next chance for that loan is July of 2018, a year from now. So although we have some preliminary results from Webster, they're going to update that report after we have to submit this application. So there could be some changes that are needed to this application. And that could, depending on the significance of it, could require us to have another hearing. We'll just have to play that by ear as we get more results. Other steps in the process, August, the state will then rank all of the applications from communities throughout the state and rank them and score them. And they will make some determination of how much money they have and who they can fund this year. And then October, they have a hearing as well, but October then they publish the final ranking. So you'll have a pretty good idea in August where the city stands with the application. You'll know for sure in October. The project plan then submits that the city likely, if the project proceeds, would conduct more detailed design late summer through the fall, really diving into the specifics of whatever odor control equipment that you decide to do, location, sizing, sound control, all sorts of things would be evaluated and designed. And then the schedule that's outlined is to advertise for construction bids in March, and then open those in April and award a contract in April, and then construction would start to occur immediately thereafter and take perhaps 12 months, maybe a little quicker, but that's probably a good schedule to plan on. So that is, in a nutshell, how this hearing tonight fits into the overall schedule. And with that in mind, I'll be around as long as you need me for questions. Brent will go through the prescribed summary of the larger document. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rubel.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bode.
Thank you. As Brian stated, there's a sign-in sheet at the front door that we need everybody to fill in as a requirement for the SRF plan. I'm going to read the statement that we put together regarding the project plan. Representing Tetra Tech, the city's consulting engineers, Brian Rubel, and myself, Brent Bode. The City of Saline prepared a project plan for the wastewater system improvements, which is part of a planning documents for the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality's MDEQ Low-Interest State Revolving Fund, SRF loan. The project plan evaluates cost-effective improvements to the wastewater system. A public hearing is a regulatory requirement for a complete project plan. According to MDEQ regulations, this public hearing must describe the following 4 items: the water quality problem to be addressed by the project and the alternatives that were considered. The wastewater treatment plant for the city of Saline, Michigan was originally constructed in 1955. The wastewater treatment plant was upgraded in 1964 and 1969. In 1985, the plant expanded to include new influent pump station, primary and secondary clarifiers, rotating biological contactors, and a 3rd digester tank. In 2000, the wastewater treatment plant added odor control units. In 2007, improvements were made to the grit removal system, UV disinfection was installed, and the existing chlorine contact tank was converted to a sludge storage tank. In 2013, improvements were made to the digester tanks and sludge pumping. In 2015, improvements were made to the tertiary filtration and a new septic receiving system was installed. The existing odor control units were nearing the end of their useful life, as demonstrated by odor concerns on the wastewater treatment plant site and surrounding area in recent air sampling. In addition, the south side pump station was found to be a noticeable source of odor emissions to the nearby residential areas. The potential alternatives were evaluated. These included to take no action, replace the existing odor control system in kind, and replace the odor control system with a newer technology. For the on-site odor control replacement, 3 alternatives were considered. First, replace the units in kind with new chemical odor scrubbers sized for 20,000 cubic feet per minute CFM. The first alternative would also include the replacement of the existing chemical storage tanks and chemical feed equipment. This alternative would require chemical storage and feed equipment. The second alternative is to replace the existing chemical scrubber with an odor control biofilter. Biofilters use microorganisms to remove odorous compounds from the air. A biofilter would not require chemical addition and the accompanying safety considerations for chemical handling, but the electrical energy would still be required for fans to collect the foul air and route it to the biofilter. The unit would be sized for a capacity of 20,000 CFM. The third alternative is to replace the existing chemical scrubber units with a new carbon odor absorption system. The system uses carbon media to capture the odorous compounds within the media pores. It would be sized for 20,000 CFM and consist of either 1 or 2 units. The alternatives considered for the south side pump station were 1,000 CFM biofilter or a 1,000 CFM carbon absorption unit. Also included in the project plan are 2 additional improvements. The first is to replace the existing wastewater treatment plant effluent flood pump, which is nearing the end of its expected useful life and is required to lift plant effluent to the Saline River during high river elevations. The 2 alternatives for this improvement are to replace the existing pump with 1 larger pump with a capacity closely matching the peak capacity of the wastewater treatment plant of 3,500 gallons per minute, GPM, or replacing the existing pumps with 2 larger pumps, each with a capacity of 3,500 GPM. The second item is to add a generator to the Sauk Trail pump station, which will ensure system operation during power outages. As a result of the recent development in the area, the Sauk Trail handles a large volume of flow. If the Sauk Trail pump station were to go out of operation, the adjacent businesses would be adversely affected and there is potential for sanitary sewer overflow. The 2 alternatives evaluated are to install either an 80 kilowatt kW diesel or an 80 kilowatt natural gas power standby generator. Second, the recommended alternatives including its capital costs and a cost breakdown by project components. The recommended alternatives are to install a 20,000 CFM carbon odor control system on site at the wastewater treatment plant. Furnish a 1,000 CFM carbon odor control system at the south side pump station. Furnish 1 new effluent flood pump and install an 80 kW natural gas generator. A summary of the components and the capital cost for the wastewater system improvements to be funded by the SRF loan and paid for by user charges are as follows. Wastewater treatment plant odor control, $1,746,000. Southside pump station odor control, $479,000. Effluent flood pump, $332,000. Sauk Trail pump station natural gas generator, $172,000. The project financing and cost to users, including the proposed methods of project financing and estimated debt retirement, and proposed charges to the typical residential customer. The city plans to proceed initially in fiscal year 2018 with an SRF low-interest loan in the amount of $2,729,000 and projects from the list above. Per the project plan, the current quarterly residential sewer bill based on 18,000 gallons of usage is $109.02. Based on receiving fiscal year 2018 SRF low interest MDEQ loan, the annual debt service for 20 years would be approximately equal to $2,729,000 times 0.06415, which equals $175,065. The current odor control system operation and maintenance costs are approximately $77,000 per year for chemicals plus $30,000 for electrical costs for a total O&M cost of $107,000. The projected approximate annual O&M cost for the wastewater treatment plant odor control improvements with the carbon absorption system is $61,600. The Southside pump station odor control improvements is $12,500. The effluent flood pump replacement is $4,400, and the Sauk Trail pump station generator installation is $2,310. This is a total approximate annual O&M cost of $80,810. Therefore, the net annual O&M cost will be reduced by approximately $26,190. $107,000 currently, less $80,810 projected. Taking these changes into account, the approximate quarterly charge for a typical residential user for fiscal year 2018 improvements would be $116.47. This is a quarterly increase of $7.45. The project planning and a user charge system will cost $25,000 and $10,000 respectively, but will be paid for using existing wastewater reserves. Therefore, these costs will not increase wastewater rates. The anticipated social, environmental impacts associated with the recommended alternatives and the measures that will be taken to mitigate adverse impacts. The construction of the proposed wastewater system improvements should have no effect on historical, archaeological, geological, cultural, or recreational areas because construction activities will be confined to existing road right-of-ways or in areas previously disturbed by construction along sewer routes and at the wastewater treatment plant. The construction of the proposed improvements will help ensure long-term reliability and efficiency of the wastewater collection system and the wastewater treatment plant, and improve air quality, which is expected to improve public perception of the wastewater treatment plant. Good public perception and support is essential to avoid future difficulties funding the wastewater treatment plant improvements and thus prevent indirect adverse impacts on the Saline River water quality. The project will not detrimentally affect the water quality or of surface or groundwater of the area, air quality, wetlands, endangered species, wild and scenic rivers, or unique agricultural land. The short-term adverse impacts associated with construction activities will be minimal in comparison to the long-term benefits resulting from the proposed project. There will be no long-term risk to public health or safety due to the proposed project. Adverse impacts due to construction activities such as noise, dust, and construction traffic cannot be avoided. However, efforts will be made to minimize the adverse impacts by the use of good design and construction techniques. The City Council must adopt the project plan prior to July 1st, 2017. Project plan submittal deadline date. Public attendance must be recorded, public comments must be recorded and publicly addressed. I will now open this public hearing to any public comments. Written public comments will be received until June 22nd of 2017 and will be included in the final project plan, which will be delivered to the MDEQ by July 1st, 2017. The MDEQ will rate this project and determine if its eligibility for a low-interest SRF loan in mid-August. The draft project plan is available for review at the Saline City Hall, the Saline District Library, Central Library, and the Saline Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Bode. We are now ready for public comments. The same guidelines apply as for other public comments, a limit of 3 minutes per person, and you are invited to say your name and your place of residence. Public comments.
Mary Hess. It's been a problem for years and years. I do have 2 comments. And the one is basically on sludge. I've talked about this probably for years. We have had our water rates raised, I think, 3 times in the last 10 years, although the rates on sludge, which for the public is cleaning out septic tanks outside the city and shipping it into our plant. We supposedly make money. But I was told years and years and years ago that the effluent of a septic tank, opposed to household toilet flushing, is about at least 200% heavier. Now that means when you take the water out and you take the other stuff out, you got a lot of subject left, which has to be hauled out on dumping fields. So we may make money, but then we have to pay for the electricity, and we have to pay for going out and land planting. And then the city sometimes talks about bringing in additional area to the city to service without annexation, which puts more of an impact on our local plant. The local plant, I have heard from someone, I think the city manager saying, or Tetra saying, these people are near a sewer plant. Well, the sewer plant didn't stink on Canterbury 10 years ago. There is a problem, and I think when these filters are working with sludge from septic tanks, that yes, it's a higher labor on them. And I was told years ago by an engineer who worked for the city that this is hard on our mechanics. And is it possible that yes, we may be making money on sludge, but we are being penny wise and pound foolish? I don't think we should put this extra impact on those people that are adjacent to the sewer plant. Thank you.
I know, Matt Rockwell, I know that I can smell the sewer stuff at different times. I also work with the farm company. We're trying to figure out if it's the sewer plant or farms. I would at least like to see both done at a different time. Some people say it's not farms, some people say it's the sewer plant. If it's the farms, then go out, way out into the country and try to smell and see if it's coming from one of the farmers. If it's the sewer plant, then it's the sewer plant. I'm sick and tired of this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with both of our committees. You guys are our city council. You guys are supposed to figure it out. And we put you in as a voter. We can remove you. So my problem is you guys figure the damn thing out.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. Are there other citizen comments or questions?
Hello, all again. I won't go through all the names again. I'm Joan Roth again. Our home is 150 feet from the wastewater treatment plant. Now, when the subdivision was built, the wastewater treatment plant was not that close. It's been expanded and added and whatnot. My husband has lived here since 1972, and I since 1979. The odors from the plant date back to the 1960s, when the Crestwood subdivision was completed. We are now 8 mayors, 3 official odor studies, several plant improvements, and 2 plant expansions later. We're over $7 million worth since 1992 spent on the plant, and that's only from newspaper articles and whatnot. I have not looked at a history of budget. Mickey Joe would probably have that, right? The sewage odors are the worst that they have ever been, and I repeat, they are worse than they have ever been. Besides the Crestwood subdivision, the daily persistent year-round odors have reached Marcana, South Ann Arbor, Willis on occasion, Pleasant Ridge subdivision, Monroe Street, when the wind is coming from that direction, and on occasion Uptown and West Henry. This is not pedestrian-friendly, nor is it customer-friendly for those dining outdoors uptown. In the near future, the Curtis Park Bluff condominiums, the Risdon Heights luxury condominiums, and the very recently purchased West Michigan land, slated, I understand, for condominiums, are likely to be affected by the odors as well. All this new construction, of course, will add and increase the volume of both the sewage and water, as has the newly built homes off Mill Street. As the public was invited, I've taken the opportunity to preview the draft SRF plan for the city of Saline. As best I can understand the details, this draft reflects the preferred recommendation from Webster Environmental Associates for the carbon absorption plan, which they believe best fits the Saline wastewater treatment plant. They also indicated this alternative would eliminate 99% of the odors. We adjacent homeowners have provided copious odor information through these many decades, and now Webster Environmental, nationally renowned for odor abatement assessments and solutions, confirmed the sources of the odors, which some of us citizens, when we did walkthroughs, identified. We're smelling it, it's coming from there. We're smelling it, it's coming from there. And they confirmed the sources of the odors and provided the city with several options, recommending the carbon absorption plan as preferable for us. In reviewing the timetable in the draft SRF plan, it indicates construction to implement this plan will not begin until July of next year, 2018, and not be completed until 2019. Already, Tetra Tech has made variations, and that's in the most recent memo that was available to view, to Webster Environmental's recommended solution and increase the cost as well. I believe this reflects a defective list of priorities by our elected and city officials. I implore you to expedite the loan process, collapse the proposed timetable to get the construction started. 2 more years of year-round, persistent daily stench is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roth.
My name is Judy Kettenstock. I am at 178 Anwood Court, Crestwood subdivision. I have lived there since 1997. We too have lived through several plant improvement projects, including the infamous blackberry odor covering attempts in the past year. We also agree with Joan that this is the worst that has ever been. We have, as we were asked to do, called Dave Horney from Tetra Tech several times to report on a regular basis the smells. But we do have to add that he has been the most professional and conscientious every single time he has come out, and we appreciate that. That he has reported and looked at the wind direction and put out all the information, and we do appreciate his visits, because we do know that he's doing his job. But the smell has been so bad on multiple occasions that we are coughing. We can't even go out on our deck to use the grill. We can't put the dogs out without coughing. So we're concerned about our health. We're concerned about the dog's health. We're concerned about the health of our community. We can't even enjoy our outdoor living space because of the smells recently. So we are imploring that we listen to what Joan Roth has said, because we have also read the recommendations from Webster Environment Associates for what's out there for the sewage plant, and we are imploring that you consider the proposed timetable and can fix the problem sooner than 2 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kevenstock. Are there other public comments?
Hi, my name's Kevin Belasic. I've lived on Crestwood since '91. Questions that I have is that when I look at this new chemical odor scrubber that size at 20,000 CFMs, is that going to be big enough for our expanding community here? Again, we've got condos coming in. There's the over by Mill Pond, and all those homes have not been built. They haven't been contributing to the wastewater plant yet. And other subdivisions are up and coming, and I'm just, I guess, fearful, living here since '91, that this again is just going to be another Band-Aid to try to fix, this odor issue here. And what Mrs. Roth had said, it's true. You get a nice day, you can't even open your windows because you have that stench coming out there. So I guess my question is, this 20,000 CFM, these scrubbers here and all these other items that we're proposing here, or these folks are proposing here, is this going to be just a temporary fix for our community? And again, as we expand, how much more will these, will this be able to absorb all the odors? And I do know that, or at least I've been told, that, our capacity, we're approximately 80%, if not a little bit more, which means that we'll probably need to build another facility at some point. So if that is the case there, we're going to spend all this money on this proposal here to get this fixed, we hope, only to probably in the short future have to go out and, purchase land and build a brand new plant that's hopefully will take care of the issues. So I'm sort of weighing those options out there. And when Mrs. Roth mentioned that that when this is all together here, 99% of the odor is going to be taken care of. Unfortunately, my experience has been, at least here with the water treatment plant, 99%, that's probably going to be our best bet right there. We're probably looking at a lot lower than that. I'll just maybe 80%, which is better than what we have now, but it's still not going to be enough. So my question is, if it's not up to par, what's going to happen then? Who's going to come back? Who's going to fix it? How quickly will it be done? Are we going to have to fork out more money for taxes right here to have somebody come in and make these other improvements, if it does go that way? I'm just going by experience here, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blasick. Other citizen comments or questions?
Good evening. My name is Russ Kincaid. I live at 206 Circle Court, and I have to agree with all the neighbors that have spoken tonight. This is getting worse and worse and worse for the last few years. I've lived in our current residence for about 18 years and have gone through a couple of the iterations as well. But I second a lot of the comments about you can't open your windows on a beautiful evening. You can't go outside and enjoy, the swing set in the backyard or whatever, even in the front yard. It's just a very difficult environment. And I have a lot of the same questions Do we have the capacity that we need? Can the current plant handle the rate and flow today, as well as the community continues to grow? I think it's grown a lot, right, in the last 20 years, and I think it's going to continue to grow. And that's a good thing for Saline, but this is a real problem, and it needs to be addressed, not with a Band-Aid. It needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. Other citizen comments?
Hi, I'm Nelson Mercer, 194 Anwood Court. I think a lot of people in the neighborhood have gone over the odor problem quite a bit. Everyone should be aware that there is one by now. What I'm a little concerned with is that the odor problem is shape-shifting poltergeist, right? So it's always changing. Sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it's not so bad. What I'm concerned with is the Webster report and Tetra Tech says this is all based on low odor concentrations that were observed in Saline last fall. And last winter, around January 20th, the odor was in the "are you kidding me" range for January 20th when it's cold outside. Never mind June or July. So when the gentleman was here from Webster Environmental, they were talking about the carbon odor control system and also the biofilter system. And he felt the biofilter system might actually be overkill for our odor problem. But if that's based on a sampling from last fall, I don't think we have good data to base an entire project on, if that's what the whole thing is based on. I understand the SRF program is deadlines and whatnot, but like the other neighbors have said, let's make sure we address it right. The other thing was Webster had talked about the biofilter. When I spoke to them, that was before they went to Grand Haven, and perhaps you gentlemen can address this, which says there's additional costs from using synthetic media that was observed in Grand Haven. And is that something that would also need to be used in Saline, or if you could maybe speak to that a little bit about the increased cost for the biofilter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Other citizen comments or questions?
If not, I'll move to close the
I
public hearing.
think we have, I think we have another one
sorry.
coming.
Elizabeth Stiles. I also lived within the Crestwood neighborhood. I wanted to make a couple comments about, I believe you guys are doing some testing again in July. When we had someone come to our home when we made a complaint, we often go on walks in the neighborhood, and they come to your home and take a test there, not necessarily where you report the odor being a problem. And so sometimes the odor wouldn't be an issue at our home, but it would be an issue out in other places within the community. So I would like to see that maybe addressed in kind of future as the study continues. I also wanted to comment, I think that there was a map showing the level of, or the frequency in which odors would be present, depending on the different option that was used. And I wondered if that is at the peak when it's at its optimal, or if that's kind of as it gets used and such, would that frequency increase as it has, I guess, most recently. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stiles. Other citizen comments or questions?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing at this time.
At 8:14 PM.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Gearbach and seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell to close the public hearing at 8:14 PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, the motion carries. We move then to the next piece of this item will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 9th, 2017 memo from Tetra Tech to approve and adopt or not adopt Resolution 17-103, a resolution adopting a final project plan for wastewater system improvements and designating City Manager Campbell as the authorized project representative.
I'll move to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Discussion.
The second was from
McClellan.
McClellan. It's been moved by Gearbach and seconded by McClellan to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh,
Oops, we should add discussion
no,
before.
discussion first, sorry.
Thanks.
A little flustered. Okay, discussion, questions, comments?
I guess
Ms.
I'll start.
McClellan, yes.
I mean, obviously, this is very important issue. It's been talked about in the media, it's talked about here, and we want to get it solved, and I think we want to get it solved right. A lot of the questions that came up tonight were questions that I had and that some of my colleagues had at our work meeting when they were discussing what options we have to fixing some of these issues. So, and I don't know if, Brian, if you'd like to discuss some of the kind of answers to those questions, because the expansion issue was one that I had, and then also the expedition of the design process and the build process was also something that I think is important. And I know I had brought the issue up whether the design process could be happening at the same time as some of the other parts and pieces of this, and I know the suggestion from Webster was that that's generally not a good idea because it could go this way or it could go that way. I'm wondering if we can hone it in a little bit closer now that we have more data, or where we're at with that, so.
I'll do my best to
Thanks.
answer those questions. Regarding the growth question, the carbon system would be able to accommodate some modest additional changes, maybe another tank or something like that. But also, if you were to expand the plant, new processes that you put online, you could add carbon canisters to those as well and have a parallel system for those. So what you do now should not restrict the ability to grow at that site, I think is the important thing to take away. Increased. The other question I wrote down that came from the audience was the increased cost of the biofilter due to the synthetic media that we saw at Grand Haven. Again, the biofilter requires a media for the bacteria to grow on, and it could be as simple as like a wood mulch is what Webster talked about, or it could be more of a purchased media that we saw in Grand Haven. There are pros and cons to each. The mulch is an organic material that decomposes, and the operators find that it requires a fair amount of work to keep that in an even layer, because as it decomposes, little holes develop that allow the air to escape without being treated. So it requires a fairly extensive amount of work to keep that operable, but it's fairly inexpensive. So at least for the planning, in the project plan, we included the synthetic media just to have a conservative cost. And again, the Webster July testing will validate biofilter or carbon system one more time. And as far as the schedule goes, we're only 3 weeks away from the Webster testing at this point, so I think absolutely it makes sense to wait for that. And as soon as that occurs, you could start design, literally by August 1st. But that will take 4 to 5 months at a minimum to get through. And then the state only has certain intervals at which you can apply for the money throughout the year, quarters of the year. So you might be able to beat I said it was March, right? March bid date. You might be able to beat that by a month or maybe 2 at the most. Maybe you can move that to January. But you can't move that 6 months forward at this point. 6 months forward would be, 8 weeks from now. It will take longer than that to work out. You might well beat it by a few months. And then the construction may not take a full 12 months. Maybe it's 9 or 10. We just haven't, that will be thought of and detailed during the design. And I would think whoever you retain the design would try to expedite that. So again, long story, I think you could probably expedite it by a few months, but not a year.
Anything else at this point, Ms. McClellan?
Not for me, thank you.
Ms. Mitchell?
I want to confirm what our current capacity is. I heard some questions from members. I know I have asked that question and gotten some answers, but I'd like to just confirm what our current capacity is. What percentage are we before we have to, A, make a report to the state for expansion, or B, have to make expansion?
I'll give you wasn't prepared for that question, but I'll give you the numbers that I recall from working at your facility, and I'm going to rely on Mr. Skull to correct me if I'm mistaken. But Bob, do I recall your rated capacity, your plan's about 1.8?
That's correct.
And your average daily flows are a little over 1, is that?
It's about 1.2.
1.2. And as I understand the state's criterion is when you get to about 85% of the 1.8, they will ask you to start thinking about an expansion, improvement of some sort. So I have to do math in my head. 0.85 times 1.8, 1.4, 1.5.
And then I too think about the future, and I don't want 40 years from now or 20 years from now, whenever we do have to expand, I don't want somebody looking at the plans and saying, what was that 2017 council thinking when they, so I think a lot about expansion too, and I just want to highlight something that you said, and I want to confirm it. So when we do have to expand, we would piggyback new equipment onto this existing equipment, is that correct?
It has the ability to take on a little bit more. If you build a new tank, maybe it will take one more tank as an example. It wouldn't be able to double. If Saline doubled in size tomorrow, this equipment would not be able to take that kind of a change.
Okay, so what I have been told is that we have the capacity in our plant right now to develop any vacant land in the city of Saline, that we would not have to think about expanding until all of that is developed. So that makes me feel a little bit better. When you say a tank, I don't know what that means. I don't know, is that, 10 years off? Is that if we annex and double our city?
That would require millions of dollars of improvements if you doubled
Right,
your
but
population. It would require way beyond the cost of the odor control.
Right, but so when you say, well, if we had to put an extra tank on, I don't know what context that is. So is that an additional, 100 households? Is that an additional 4,000 households, or?
It's not as much as 4,000. It's hundreds or 1,000, something like that. I'm just off the cuff giving you my best guess at that.
Right. And then there was a question about the map. I think the last citizen to speak was talking and asking for some clarity, that you were talking about estimated, and forgive me, there are a lot of maps, so I'd have to.
Yes.
But, the question was, what the data on the map, is that under,
It's Webster's report and the
Okay.
mapping that they did, and I'm being asked to interpret their report now, so.
I understand that.
Okay.
Sure, I understand that caveat.
I
yeah.
suspect, well, in fact, I'm looking at one right now where it says peak contours. So to me, that means they were mapping the peak odor, not an average odor,
Okay,
when I see that label on the drawing.
okay.
That's how I interpret that.
There is basically two maps. There's like a concentration map of strength
Miss-
of odor.
Mr. Bode, could you go to the microphone? Thank you.
There's a concentration map, which basically indicates the strength of an odor, and there's a frequency map, which indicates how many periods throughout a year that an odor may be detected at that location based on the contours, is what those are doing. So it kind of shows what their model generated for how often a odor above a certain threshold is detected at that location. And then it kind of shows it before, and then it shows after improvements and the reduction of
Okay.
of how many odor, I guess, occurrences would occur.
Okay,
That's what the purpose of those maps
all
are.
right, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm done for now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gearbach?
Yeah, just to tag on to some of the questions about capacity and so forth. So just doing your numbers that you had presented, about 270,000 gallons of sewage would need to come through on a daily basis. What would that be an equivalent of additional homes? What's the average use per day of,
It's a little over 200, so I think that math would be well over 1,000 homes.
right? So I think at this point, we knew that when we were building out our city, as it is right now, that we have capacity. And I agree, and as others have mentioned, that annexation into the city would be an issue. And at this point, the other alternatives where they're identifying is that using annexation and using septic systems that are outside our city would definitely not be any kind of thing that I will support, because we have enough issues with our own tempting to try and handle it. To have that happen in another section outside the city would be a failure. So we already are addressing that, and I've already talked about it. From my perspective, we need to look at a regional sewage plant at some time in the future. We're not at that point yet, but it's something that should be in the planning stage from our Washtenaw County commissioners and so forth. So from that perspective, we need to take care of our own business now. So I agree with what we're doing so forth. My concern that I don't see this being a huge issue at this point, because fortunately for us, Forcia doesn't do the kind of waste treatment that it used to do. Eden Foods have adjusted some of theirs. I am concerned about some of the issues that are attached to this proposal. It's more than just the pollution. So we're addressing the effluent pump, and we're also addressing the generator that's associated with the Sauk Trail Park. Is that because we want to do it all as part of this to be it's now time to do it because we want to do it? Or will that cause us issues? If we were to reduce the cost of this proposal going into the state, would we have a better chance?
Yeah, I can't address the need for those projects. They were
I'm concerned about that
discussed
need
with me
being put in here.
with staff. You are not locked into that at this point. If you apply for funds to cover those two projects, you can elect not to do those at any time.
But I'm concerned about what we're submitting to the state in terms of being ranked or pointed. This is just clearly a lottery, so if we go in with a
No.
$3 million request versus a $2.5 million, will there be any ranking as that?
My recollection of the ranking is that dollars are not part of the ranking. It is environmental benefit is where the ranking comes from. So water quality, reliability, things like that. I'm not certain those two projects, I don't believe, would have either a positive or a negative impact on your ranking.
I could see from an environmental standpoint for the effluent pump would be a support, but my concern is with and I'll talk about that later, is the issue with the Sauk Trail plant, because I have a feeling that's associated with the hotel that's being built, and that should have been brought forward as a concern when that was being done.
Mr. Gearbach, would you be open to having Mr. Skull talk about those two items at this point?
Yes, if he wants to, that's fine.
Mr. Skull?
I've got a couple questions that he can address for me in terms of the odor, too.
The first item was the generator at Salt Trail. What I've been trying to move towards is getting more backup generators or more fixed generators just as a matter of course. So we're trying to rate them as priority, which if I had my druthers, where would I want an on-site generator to cut down response time? And it would be Salt Trail.
Is that because of the new developments coming in, or, because I see it on the plan, you have 4 requested.
Yeah.
4 areas that we have portable generators working. So this is now Salt Trail.
Well, the existing on-site generators we have was a condition when they went in.
Right.
It was put up as a requirement for the approval. These industrial ones, like Industrial Park or Maplewood or Salt Trail, we have a portable generator, which was 1978 model, so it's getting older. It still works. We keep it well maintained, but if there's a widespread power outage, Salt Trail has several businesses in Salt Trail have their own generators, so they won't shut down like they traditionally did. Usually the problem took care of itself because businesses shut down. Well, that doesn't necessarily happen anymore. And with the hotel, that will have an impact on there.
And one of my things, funding for that could come out of the LDFA, because I think there should be funding coming out directly. I don't see why we would shift this onto all the user rates as part of this funding. So that's a question that I have, separate of this at this point. But the other one, the pump replacement, where there was the 2 options of a single pump versus 2 pumps.
Currently, we have a single pump, and I think a single pump would be fine for the future. The pump we have now is, of course, the motor's electrical, but the devices to throttle the speed is mechanical, and it's very old, they're failing. And this pump is used when the river rises above our discharge point. It just increases, the head pressure, so it can push it out to the river.
Okay.
It's only used maybe, on a really bad year, maybe 6 times, so it's not used frequently, but when we do need it, we do need it.
And if we expect more potential weather
Seems
like
that
we've
way.
had, could be an issue. The other question I have, in the last month or so, we've had those major odor smells, and they were, one I know for sure was related to a spill, I believe, on a Friday night.
Oh, we were having the sludge removed, the biosolids removed for the plantings.
How often will that be an issue in the future? If it was associated with the bios, that being removed, are we going to continue to have that kind of smell regardless of whatever we do?
Probably. I'll be honest with you. Those 2, we usually have 2 pumping events a year, and they usually last for 2 to 3 days. Usually one in the spring, in May or June, depending on the weather, and one when the wheat comes off in August.
So did we have anything on a Saturday where that was done?
They pumped on Saturday. Well, they were cleaning up on Saturdays, what they were doing, their equipment.
Okay, so when you say cleaning up, that
Well, they
mean they're
were-
hosing it down and?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have tanker trucks and such that they...
Can I add a quick question to that? Would that problem be resolved if there was if we went to the carbon solution?
We have carbon units on the sludge holding tanks as it is, but when you open the hatches to pump out, to remove the material, it kind of shorts out the
But I'm asking
airflow.
if we went to the carbon filter system versus the biosystem, would we wouldn't have to haul it off, right?
No, we'd still have to haul it off, and there still may be some odors during those events. I'm not going to say it's never going to
Okay.
have an odor.
But there's no way to adjust it to try and encapsulate it so that however it's pumped out is
We
sealed?
could probably be more proactive. This is a brand-new hauler we just had for the first time last month. We could probably work with them on trying to seal it up when they're done at the end of the day.
Because that is one issue that I know is not going to go away, so I don't know how, unless we can figure out a better way to handle it, and it could be an issue on the hauler, making sure they take their precautions to do that.
Well, I think it's worse with the haulers because they are pumping it up into the air, into the truck, so they definitely stir it up.
But we have to do that because we're
We have
taking
to.
our stuff out.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily, even if we didn't do septic haulage, we're still going to have to do
We'd
that.
still do it, yeah.
Correct. So we talked about growth. I mean, we've already got this concern again, and that's going to be the whole thing of if this fails and doesn't work. My concern with the biofilter, as he just mentioned, was that sounds like it's going to be labor intensive.
It depends which media we go with. The media that we saw in Grand Haven, we were blank there for a second. My understanding, it has a 10-year guarantee. It's a hard material, so it doesn't break down. Sort of like little tiny charcoal briquettes. Kind of looks like that. And they've had good luck with it. They don't pencil any money in it to maintain it every year because there's very little maintenance. It seems like a good system. The problem is with that, and what we really have to stick to our guns on that second round of testing is if the odor's higher, we're going to have to go with the biofilter. If it's lower, we'd be better served with the carbon filter. But if the early indication showed that a carbon scrubber would work. The problem is if the odor, there's more odors than we anticipated from that first cold weather study, we would go through the carbon bed much quicker, and there's a lot of cost involved in that. So we really have to stick around for that second testing.
So you're saying we'd have to replace the carbon
more often.
Canisters more often than the other one?
Well, it would be the canisters. This would be a sealed unit where you'd basically have to suck out the material in there and put new carbon in there, carbon resin in there,
Okay.
Depending on the strength of the gases it's treating.
So as part of our proposal, we show the $1.7 million for a carbon filter system, but isn't it another $500,000 or more for the biofilter? Or remember?
I believe it was more. The exact amount, I don't have that in front of me right now.
Okay. So what we're approving tonight may not potentially cover the amount of the loan that we actually need unless we were to eliminate the two add-ons that we put into this. We're asking for $2.7 million. If we end up having to pay, an extra $500,000 to do a biofilter versus a carbon filter, where's that $500,000 coming from?
It's a good question. I don't know. I didn't generate the numbers, so I can't answer that.
So I'm at that point right now trying to figure out if we don't know the final product we need, we don't
Right.
have the numbers to which we need to commit to.
Well, I think
Or the
Brian's
ideas.
better at this than I am, but I think the amount we're asking for, we don't have to use. We just want to make sure we have it allotted to us.
Right, but I'm thinking we're looking at the cost of the benefit of a 2.5% revolving loan, correct?
Correct.
But if this whole plan is to happen the way it's presented, we would basically eliminate the effluent pump and the generator to cover it within this 2.7 million that we're asking for? If we use a biofilter?
The loan dollars are only there for the cost-effective solution. So if, right now, we believe the cost-effective solution is the carbon system. If the Webster report indicates higher loadings and that the biological system is the cost-effective solution, we will have to approach DEQ about changing the project plan.
And can I clarify, and can that be done in part of this year's process?
Yes, you need to get on the list now. And there is mechanisms to change the dollar value, the type of work done as you progress through the system. It may take another hearing, it may take another submittal of some sort, but there are mechanisms. They like it to be as complete as it can be by next week, but we're not there.
But it wouldn't force us into next year's round of review?
Not necessarily. It would depend on the magnitude of the change, and they don't tell me what is their threshold, but there is the mechanism to change it and still keep on the schedule that we talked about earlier tonight.
And then one last one. As an alternative to using the revolving fund, what would be the equivalent, I guess we'd say, in interest if we were to float our own bond and do the whole thing? Because
Well, I don't feel I should answer that because I'm not a financial professional. I would give you a wrong answer. So
Well, that's fine. That would be a question for our city
Correct.
manager, whatever. But we would have the opportunity, if we wanted to, float our own loan, but it's going to cost us more, but it would move the project scheduling
yeah,
ahead.
absolutely, anytime. You could even apply today and change your mind in August, September. Yep.
Well, because we're already asking for $1.5 million for another project, so that's a clarification. That's it for me right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seal.
In reviewing the report from Tetra Tech, you have a section here called 2.3.7 flow analysis. And we've been talking about capacities, so this struck me. This talks about the average flow of 1.193 million gallons per day which represents 136 gallons per capita, which exceeds apparently the federal threshold of 120 gallons per capita per day for dry weather flow. The same holds true for peak record flow, where we exceed the state and federal threshold. What are the implications to us for those, for exceeding those capacities?
I believe with the residential, as plumbing equipment gets newer and newer, they're more concerned with water conservation. That number that they come up with per household or per capital use continues to decline as equipment gets more and more effective.
Right. Right.
A lot of our flow at the plant is infiltration during rain events, so we will see peak flows after a rain or a big spring thaw.
But Bob, are there any implications to us as a city for exceeding those state and federal thresholds?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I mean, we do not exceed the limits at the wastewater plant. We haven't, that has not been an issue. So if that's what you're questioning, I'm not really sure.
Well, we've been talking about capacity. That certainly is one of the things that's foremost in our minds as we address this issue. And then this particular section, stuck in my mind, jumped out at me.
Mr. Rubel?
I'm quite familiar with any implications with that. If the city were looking to replace a pump or something that involved capacity, wet weather or dry weather capacity, we would need to do a separate analysis to the DEQ to show whether it's less expensive to take that water out of your system or to leave it in and design and build for that higher capacity. But being an odor control unit, that doesn't come into play. So that should not affect the funding in any way, that flow rate. We have to go through it and show it to them. Should not affect the funding. That is not uncommon to see flow rates like that for older sewer systems like yours. In fact, I would not even say that yours is above average for an older system.
So this isn't going to jump up, raise a flag, and cause another project to be pushed upon us?
If you were building we were changing out the raw sewage pumps for the higher capacity, it absolutely would. For odor control, it should not. In fact, the DEQ already reviewed this draft and gave us a few minor comments, but the theme was that we were on track with everything.
All right, one other question, then I'm done. You quote in here several times operation and maintenance costs as part of the overall cost of the project. Over what time period do those operation and maintenance costs run?
The guidelines require us to look at a 20-year planning period. So we have to look at capital cost and operation and maintenance cost over a 20-year period. We do discount it. We're required to discount it for inflation and other factors. As $1 tomorrow won't be worth as much as $1 today. So.
Correct. Thank you.
Ms. Dillon?
Well, most of my questions have been asked. There's just a few left. When we talk about usage, what we've kind of focused on is how many households. What happens if we bring in another major industrial user? Where does that put us? I mean, are we limiting then the expansion of industrial?
Not with the odor control project. I mean, but yes, at some point, an industrial customer takes capacity that otherwise would go to a residential customer. Right? Gallon is a gallon, depending on wherever it comes from.
Okay. I guess you're probably not the right, I guess it would either come from Mr. Campbell or Mr. Skull on that then. So what happens then if we have enough capacity to build out Saline as it is? Does that include if we were to bring in additional industrial?
Well, it would depend on the nature of the industry. If it was a heavy water user like American Soy, yeah, we would have to look at increasing the capacity of the plant. If it's a plastic molding like Jack Products, maybe not so much.
Okay. Okay, so that's just something we'll have to take into
Just to tag on
consideration.
that, we have experienced, and I think in even special projects, most of those companies that have that kind of heavy use now are trying to recycle or do their own treatment because they know the cost is too exceeds too much. Eden for American soy is a great example of that. So there's a lot of incentive to not have their water and effluent go through our system.
Okay. And then I want to talk about the 99%. So this may be going back to Mr. Rubel. Sorry, just going to keep you guys bouncing back and forth. I mean, 99% of what? I mean, what exactly, where are we going to be with 1%? What kind of a smell is that going to be? I mean, it's a little number, but is it still a big smell? Because I do recall when we were at Grand Haven, one of the things that was discussed was you can add this other filter on to filter the 1% and bring it down lower, and it's like, you know, at what point do you stop? I mean, where is it tolerable?
That is community dependent. I can't give you an answer. If you get to this threshold of sulfide compounds, everybody's happy, because everybody won't be happy.
Okay.
There's going to be days where you change the carbon too, and that's not going to be a good smelling day.
Yeah.
But that, you know,
No, I mean, trust me, I saw there was, in a blink of an eye, things can change. That's how it was at Grand Rapids for us. Then the other thing is construction in a 12-month period. I mean, it's not going to be the last day when everything's perfect. I mean, is it something where it could be front-ended, where, I mean, at what part of the process are you going to see a difference?
it's going to be closer to the end than the beginning. It'll take 12 to 16 weeks just to order the equipment and get it on site. That's how long it takes to manufacture water and wastewater equipment. So it takes a month to get a construction contract. We'll have to do site work and piping, and all that will have to be done at the front. So will it be the last month? No, but it'll be much closer to the end than the beginning.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable moving on with the next phase when we're still having failures with our filters now that we have?
A different filter.
I know it's a different system, but I mean, at some point, it's all part of one big system. It's not going to impact that at all?
No, they're independent.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think that'll be okay for right now. Thank you.
Okay. I have two things. So one of the questions that has been raised to me by various members of the community is the necessity for the July testing. And that I think it's been referred to a couple of times tonight, but if you could just briefly talk about why the July testing is very important to do, I think that would be appreciated. I would appreciate it. I think others might as well.
The warmer weather, a lot of the odors are caused by bacteria activity in the sewage, the wastewater. The warmer weather promotes more bacteriological growth and activity, and that in turn creates more odors. So the warm weather testing was identified as a way to try to get more of the testing regarding the peak season. So, I mean, that is one reason the odors probably have been pretty bad the last couple of weeks, is because we're warmer weather now, so this bacteria is producing more odors. We want to measure that. Webster wants to measure that, I should say.
Okay. And thank you. And then just, I believe I understand correctly, but just to confirm, the addition of the flood pumping station and the backup generator have no effect on the timeline for this project, adding them to the
That's a very good question. No, that should not affect the timeline. They would be done in parallel and completed at roughly the same time.
But, so no effect on the
That does not
approval
delay the
process,
odor
or
in any way.
doesn't
No.
affect
No.
this project in any way? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any
I
other?
do have one.
Yes,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Dillon. Yes, go ahead.
In your report, you had talked about the SRF funding will take the least costly avenue, correct?
Correct.
So now, if we don't want to do that, can we take their money and we add to it, or does that mean we don't get their funding?
I called with that specific question to make sure I had that answer for tonight, and their answer was no funding would be made available for that alternative if you implemented anything other than the low cost.
Okay. And then I have one other question regarding the SRF funding. Is the elephant in the room is what happens if we don't get it? I mean, how many bites at the apple do you get, and then what does that do for our time frame? I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
a once-a-year project, so, I mean, is it something we would consider holding off, or are we, like Mr. Gearbaugh had talked about, would we consider finding other financing sources?
Yeah,
And I know that's beyond your scope, but just as to...
You would be given priority for the next year, which I think I'm hearing would not be acceptable, so you would probably choose to seek another funding source, would be my guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question brought on by Ms. Dillon and Mr. Gerbaugh's question about the different parts, the 4 different parts, and then looking at the loan versus doing it ourselves. And this also might be a question for Mr. Campbell, so whoever can answer it. So somewhere, I think the low-cost loan that we could possibly get, that we would have to take the lowest cost option for, is 2.5%, correct? And what is the possible interest? I don't know interest rates or anything. What is the difference in interest if we just said, we're going to do what we need to do to solve this problem, we're going to get our own bond? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think Mr. Gierach asked that very question. We would have to follow up with our financial advisor to see what they were thinking. But Mickey Joe, what's proposed for the new issue? I was thinking it was...
There's the cost of issuance.
Yeah,
that it would
so
pay to.
about 2.6. So it'd be, now, again, it's not in stone. I mean,
Right.
It's potentially in the similar ballpark. I mean, currently as bonds are going right now.
So my thoughts at this point, if we're at that point in the discussion, is I really want to stay focused on odor abatement and speed. And I think that our community has spoken, and they have tasked us with fix it. Evidence-based science is going to tell us what needs to be fixed, and fix it soon. So when I look at the difference between 2.5% and, possibly 2.6, and could we have an increased action and faster action, it's tempting not to look at that and say, why not?
But would that be faster, though, or would we have to start the process all over again to do that? That's my question. That would be my question, is that if we don't go, I mean, I feel like let's go and see what happens with this, but if we are investigating having to do it ourselves, should we start that process now versus having to wait to be refused and then try and figure, another 3 months of trying to figure out what kind of loan we're going to get on our own? I don't know what the process is for that, so.
We could certainly investigate it and talk with our financial advisor and see what they think could be a possibility. I mean, so we could talk with them and see what kind of strategy we might be able to put in place.
In my mind, I think that's probably just a good idea as a backup, just to have as, just in case kind of thing, so that we don't hold up any timelines going forward to getting it fixed once we have the data.
And if I may, to Mr. Rubel's comments, I mean, this is to move forward, right? But regardless of what happens, whether it's approved or not approved, I mean, we could always change course, but at this point, if you want to consider, if you want to have the SRF as an option, then of course we need to proceed. But certainly we will look into alternative strategy of us doing, because that's certainly when, that certainly is in the forefront of my mind with the, especially if if they would only, in fact, if we wanted, say, for the biological, and they say, well, sorry, the cost estimate for the carbon is the lowest, so that's what we want to go with, or what they'll pay for, then certainly, again, what does the community want? What does it think? What does the community think is best? So if that's the more expensive one, but it's going to get the job done better, then, but yeah, we can certainly, we can start working on that immediately.
Mr. Gearbox.
Just to clarify on that, so you're saying that, and I agree what you said, Mr. Rubel, that if we have to go with the more expensive biofilter one, we're out of running for the state of Michigan money, right?
Unless we can show, due to the subsequent testing, that the biofilter truly is the cost-effective approach, then we have to modify our project plan, and we still might get the funding. But as we sit here tonight, all signs are pointing that the carbon is the cost-effective approach.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how you would justify $500,000 in terms of what you've shown already in your numbers that we've been presented. Okay, thank you.
So the motion before us is moved by Gearbox, seconded by McClellan, simply to acknowledge receipt of the June 9th, 2017 memo from Tetra Tech. Is there any further discussion? If not, we will proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Now, we look for a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt Resolution 17-103, a resolution adopting a final project plan for wastewater system improvements and designating City Manager Campbell as the authorized project representative. Is there a motion?
Move to approve and adopt.
Second.
It's been moved by McClelland and seconded by CO to approve and adopt. Discussion? Mr. CO.
Yes, I'd like to add a caveat to that city staff continue to explore alternative financing options so that if in fact this SRF loan either fails because of them pointing us to the lowest cost option and the other would suit our purposes better, or we fail to be granted the loan this year, that we're at least equipped to move forward as expeditiously as possible, especially given the criticality of this issue to the neighborhoods, so that we're prepared one way or the other to move forward in the quickest possible manner to bring the best possible solution to bear.
Mr. CO, did you want to modify the motion, or?
Is it necessary to modify the motion, or can we proceed without having to modify the motion?
I'll support amendment I'll make a motion to put amendment on it to also investigate other financial options.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to modify the motion, to amend the
I
motion?
made amendment to that motion, and now we got to vote on that. because-
Right, okay.
Ms.
Or
Mitchell
can we do
supported.
it as a friendly amendment?
We can.
We can, okay. So, Mr. CO, will you accept that as a
I
friendly?
will. Yes,
as-
please.
Okay. Clerk Royal, can you give us the new wording of the motion, please?
It's a motion to approve and adopt Resolution 17-103, a resolution adopting a final project plan for wastewater system improvements and designating City Manager Campbell as authorized project representative. And the amendment add to investigate other financial options.
Mr. Gearbox, acceptable?
Yes.
Mr. CO? Okay.
Oh, Ms. McClellan made the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I have it written right down here.
That's okay.
And I just want to make one more comment, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Having Mr. Campbell as the authorized project representative, I believe, will help us make sure this happens. But I want to make sure that this is a priority project, and I want to make it clear, and maybe council doesn't support me on this, but that other projects that may be taking your time away or whatever, to not get this accomplished as soon as possible you make us note of that, and we will make arrangements as a council to make this a priority.
Understood.
Ms. Mitchell?
And forgive my newness, but we're discussing the amendment, and then the contents is another vote. Is that correct?
It was
We can-
accepted as a friendly, Ms. McClellan and Mr. CO accepted it as a
Okay.
friendly amendment.
So what I would like to hear from my peers is thoughts on, do we want to look at this whole project, or do we just want to simply focus on odor control? Because that was something alluded to by Mr. Gerba, and I really want to maintain focus on that.
Ms. McClellan, then Mr. Gerba.
In my mind, I think if we're applying for the loan, we may as well apply for, all of the things that could be covered under. I don't think it's going to hurt anything to do that. If for some reason we're not approved for it, then that piece of it, I think, could probably drop off. I don't know. I mean, I think it doesn't hurt the motion. That's my personal opinion.
Mr. Gerbach, and then Mr. CO.
It's proposed the way it is right now. We need to get it submitted. I think we're fine with it. We'll make a decision on what happens if we do not receive the funding approved at that time. But I think the effluent pump is something that we need to make sure that we don't have that problem. We do not need to be nailed for some kind of spillage or problem that should happen. I believe that is a priority too. As for the backup generator, I have my own personal concerns about that, but I think we need just to move it. It's written, it's prepared, it can go as right away.
Okay.
Mr. CO.
I agree. I think the whole package should move forward. I understand that the odor control is the issue that brought us to the table initially, and as the pressing issue here for the majority, I think, of the people that we represent. I don't think it delays anything to include the other issues as long as we're addressing the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you.
Other discussion or questions, comments? Are we ready to vote? It's been, yes, Mr. Rubel. Yes, please.
Apologize.
By all means.
To interrupt. I just want to make sure you're clear that that resolution is an attachment to this project plan, so the DEQ will read the resolution. I'm just a little worried about putting the language about seeking alternate financing inside of that resolution. They're going to score your application.
That's fine. We can do
Agreed.
it.
Just a little fearful of that. Not that you shouldn't still do that, but I just worry about putting that in.
Seems to me it could cut both ways. They could sit up and say, these folks are serious about getting this done.
The resolution that you have largely follows what they call a sample resolution. It doesn't say you have to pass it word for word, but
I see.
It does derive from a sample that they provided, so.
Ms. McClellan.
Can we offer it as a separate motion then, to just investigate so that it's not part of the resolution, but it's on record at the meeting, so that we have a separate motion that we're going to be investigating? I mean, I trust that Todd is going to do that anyway, but.
I was going to suggest to just make it a separate, if council wanted to do that, but whichever. But certainly, staff understands loud and clear.
Mr. Rubel, will that alleviate your concern?
I can't quantify the risk either way. It's just maybe a little uneasy to bear it, so.
Well,
Yes, it does.
okay, thank you. It seems to me also wise not to throw any uncertainty into this process. So how do we go about?
So can I
Do you have to
revise my motion then and say that we are going to approve and adopt Resolution 17-103, a resolution adopting a final project plan for wastewater treatment or wastewater system improvements, and designating City Manager Campbell as the authorized project representative, taking away the friendly amendment?
And I would second that.
Well, Dean has to.
No,
Dean has- you
it's
don't
a
have to
friendly
withdraw?
amendment. We never voted on it, so we're fine.
Okay.
Okay. So are we in order parliamentarily at this point? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Okay. In that case, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
I move to make a motion to parallel a investigation into other financial options to fund this project, the pollution control project.
Second.
It's been moved by Gearbach, seconded by CO to, Clerk Laura, we'll give you a moment.
I have to parallel investigations for other financial options for this project.
For the pollution control project.
For the pollution.
Odor abatement project, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So the motion is?
To investigate other financial options for the odor abatement project.
Mr. Gearbach?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Seal?
Yes.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Good hard work, everyone. So we move on to our second public hearing, item 17104. This is regarding special land use for 1345 East Michigan Avenue.
Move to open public hearing?
At
Second.
9:05 PM. It's been moved by McClelland, seconded by CO to open the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is open. Are there any public comments?
Move to close?
Move to close at 9:00. Oh, sorry.
I don't know what this piece of property is and what the use is.
Yeah, this is kind of, I was going to mention
Yeah.
that. We really should have a
There's no
little,
information.
Yeah.
It just says land use for this address.
Okay, so before we,
Somebody explain,
yes,
please?
okay. Before we close the public hearing, the memo is from is from the Planning Commission. Mr. Rubel or Mr. Gearbach,
I can-
as a member of the Planning Commission?
I'll let you.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. The request for special land use in C3, per C3 zone, in the C3 overlaid by SPA 1 at the location known as Commons at Sauk Trail Shopping Center, where you have Imagine Theater. Within that group of businesses under that site plan, those are general, retail, and commercial uses that are allowed by and prescribed by Part A of the zoning code for permitted uses in the C3 district. Also, there are Part B uses which are considered special land uses. Those are permitted after special approval, and those come at a two-step process versus the one-step. So within that group, you have the subsection that is on your agenda paperwork from the Planning Commission, showing that the proposed recreational use known as X-Golf, which is an indoor simulated golf business. The owners
Can you speak into your microphone? It seems the audience is having a hard time hearing you.
It's the permitted use under request is X-Golf. It's simulated golf indoor, and it's very unique use, new to this area. It's been reviewed by the Planning Commission, and the special approval is needed per the zoning code because it's a recreational use in a commercial zone.
And Mr. Rubel, I believe there's also a note on the application that refers to the sidewalk cafe service as a special use.
No, the sidewalk cafe use as a special use is only when it's associated with sidewalk cafe of a public sidewalk in the D1 district, if you read that ordinance. We do try to meet some of the criteria of that as part of the review. Basically, it's what's called an administrative site plan review and approval. It's not part of the land use approval for the recreation use. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Gearbach.
Could we ask the applicant to give us a little overview? Because I think we'd be interested to hear what you're planning and proposing.
The applicants are Jeff and Charlotte Tapp. and they would also be the owner-operator of the business.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tapp.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Tapp. We are, with your graces, hoping to open the next golf store here in Saline. It's an indoor golf simulator store, which basically is going to have 5 simulators. You're going to bring your own clubs in there, and you're going to stand about 15 feet away from a large HD screen. You hit your golf ball into the screen, and the screen automatically simulates where your ball would go to several courses throughout the United States and throughout the world. There's going to be over 100 courses to choose from. We also are going to have a bar there, so we are going to sell alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, but by no means is this going to be a bar. This is going to be a golf simulator store that's going to derive most of our business. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. There's going to be one of the simulators is going to be sectioned off by itself, so if you want to do golf lessons there, if you want to do a business deal, and things like that for a more serious setting, but the other 4 are going to be open. So there's going to be some music playing in the background, and you're going to be basically playing golf indoors, but you're going to feel like you're playing outdoors. So it's a fun type of thing that we're looking to bring to Saline. Yeah.
Thank you. We're currently in the public hearing segment of this discussion, so at this point,
I would
no?
say let's have a little more discussion, because usually we take the memo first and then discuss it, but since we already
Okay,
had a previous discussion.
I'm following the order of the agenda, so sorry. Yeah. Are we in trouble parliamentary-wise if we reverse?
I think we're fine the way we are right now.
Do you want to, I mean, typically, for a special land use, it's not a site, so it's typically special land use to get the comments, and then you close, then you can discuss.
Close it after. Yeah, we can close it
Okay,
afterwards.
so at this point, we'll take questions and comments on this from the public.
Sure.
Okay.
Just for further clarification,
Yeah.
so the public is aware, this location is in the storefront between the President Imagine Theater and the AAA office. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does that help? You're welcome.
And I also want to note that this is a franchise. It's not something that we just thought of overnight. So we have plenty of resources to get us going and to keep us going as the store opens. So.
Okay. Are there comments or questions from the public?
If not, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion at 9:12 to close the public hearing by Gearbox, seconded by CO. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Then the next order of business is to acknowledge receipt of the June 15th, 2017 memo from the Saline Planning Commission and to approve or not approve the special land use for 1345 East Michigan Avenue.
I'll move to acknowledge the receipt at this time.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. Discussion. Ms. Dillon.
In the application, it talked about outdoor televisions. That is not something we've allowed in Saline in the past. Are we making an exception and opening the door to this?
Mr. Rubel, that was discussed at the Planning Commission.
Actually, no one's ever requested that before, and I've not seen anything in the code that prohibits that.
We don't have it in our code? Okay, because
I've never seen anything that would prohibit outdoor television in
I'm
a
sure you're going to see a
patio.
lot more of them now.
Yeah. Well, if the council wants to put forth an ordinance to prohibit that, then we would ask planning commission to look at it.
Okay. And I do want to take note that I do have concerns about alcohol being served outside on the patio. In their application, they've talked about having a maximum of 3 staff members working at any given time at maximum 3. I don't feel as though that's sufficient in an area where you have the movie theater and you're going to have a lot of underage people. I think it's inviting just situations, even though the property we know it's going to have some sort of roping off, but you will have theoretically alcohol that's unattended. and minors in the area. So I do have concerns about that.
Other comments or questions? Ms. McClellan?
I'm actually excited about this project. I think, I know my husband goes to the one on Carpenter and Platt right now, and he's already like, I think I'm going to move the league over here. So I'm kind of excited about it. I don't necessarily see that, I mean, I do have concerns about the alcohol on the sidewalk a little bit, but I would assume that with your liquor license and regulations that you will be responsible about that. And there's other establishments in town that have similar setups, so I don't really see that as much different than this one. But I'm looking forward to it, and we'll definitely be supporting.
Mr. Tapp, did you want to comment on the arrangements for oversight of alcohol? And since we're talking about alcohol, I had a question related to that as well, which is what are your plans for obtaining a permit to serve alcohol?
Okay,
I'm not
the
sure
first
what our
one-
situation in the city is about that right now.
Okay, excuse me. The first one was the outdoor seating, and you're being worried about the lack of people working at the store and whatnot. This business primarily does the bulk of its business in the wintertime. Obviously, most golfers in the summertime go outside to golf. So in the summertime, we don't anticipate it being as busy, if you will, as it is in the wintertime. So as far as having enough employees to monitor that, I think we should be fine there. So hopefully, you're you're not concerned about that, but I know we have plenty of employees that will work for us and will definitely address that issue. As far as our liquor license is concerned, we are in the process of getting our liquor license. It's been a long process, but we're dealing with the state right now, and we are confident that we're going to be receiving that shortly.
Mr. Gearbach?
Could you clarify that, Mr. Campbell? Because I thought we had to be involved somehow in a liquor license.
Depends on the license. They have made changes. I know they had contacted staff with Mickey Joe and some different types of licenses that I can't remember the one that Imagine has.
It's a resort.
Resort. That may have been asked about, and I don't think that may not qualify, but there are some other options too. But certainly Chief Riddick could potentially speak on some of the oversight, but it's not as much as it used to be. But we have not. I'm not aware that anything has come. I don't know, Chief, has anything come to the police department for procedurally to review? So we haven't seen anything, but we're here when we do.
No, for my question, I wasn't sure. In the past, it always either you had to buy one, or like we did with
Right.
Imagine, or you had to be allocated one through our population. And
Right.
I didn't know they had changed all the rules yet. And so
They've tinkered with it, is I guess a better term, but.
We're learning these rules as well.
because it's interesting, because even when we did the thing for distillery and serving, the brewery are a different type of license too that had to come through us. So just to give the heads up, there may be some more aspect of that.
Yeah, just to follow up from Mr. Campbell, would we then expect, we had to approve the request for Imagine Theater to take the route they did. Would you expect that to happen in this case as well, or have the rule changed also?
I think it depends on the type of license.
Okay.
But I believe, so again, we have not received anything to consider.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McClellan, yes.
Yeah, if we approve the special land use, it stays with the business, correct? So if we approve it, and they say, hey, we're going to move, out of Saline or someplace else, the land use then is null and void, is that correct?
Right, right,
Okay.
just be with the applicant.
Okay.
But I guess if I might, interrupt,
Yes, please.
But to Ms. Dillon's point about, I guess, certainly if I share similar concerns, I guess at some point, whether it's now or if it does come before the city council, specific procedures. And I guess the reason I say that, you all may recall when Imagine Theater came in and they applied, they had received similar questions, but they have pretty intense, and of course I get it, there's more people, and I understand that, but they have some pretty specific procedures in place to keep the alcohol out of the wrong hands.
Sure.
So, I can't speak for council, but I would encourage that you be prepared at some point to be able to let council know what those procedures are.
Okay.
I'm seeing other nodding heads at the table, so I'm assuming that we concur with Mr. Campbell with that recommendation and request. Mr. Gearbach.
And this may be for Mr. Rubel's answer, but in terms of the monitors and the TVs, when Speedway placed monitors on top of their pumps, we did not allow that. How is that different than other locations? Because I thought that was part of signage concerns and such.
Well, at that point in time, those, I forget what the term they used for those, but it was for advertising products. Not only Speedway products, but other products. And so then advertising, per the sign ordinance covers advertising signs. So it takes on the auspices of signage. And that's why the TV monitors were taken off the gas pumps.
My only concern would be, not necessarily Gary, thank you. My only issue would be is that there might be a limit set on when those monitors are going to be running after a certain time at night. It's just a concern that, I don't know what your hours are going to be, but if they're open until 1 or 2 a.m., that would be more of an issue that I would...
That's more of a bar setting. We're trying to do a golf indoor simulator setting. Midnight's going to be our close. That's going to be on the weekends, 10 o'clock weekdays, so.
Yeah, and I was more concerned about the summertime, because I know that the patio is to help benefit you during the seasonal low, and I can understand that. But I am looking forward to this, because I mentioned that planning, I think this is a great business to associate with Imagine Theater that helps make that an entertainment complex or more of a destination place in town, so that adding your business will not only make it a lot more friendlier in terms of having more people come to it. So it's one of our goals to get that to be a successful shopping center.
Sure, and I'm a teacher, so being a teacher myself, I understand your concerns with the youth, so definitely that's something that we need to look into, and we will, so.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell.
I just wanted to point out the difference too with monitors is that I feel like the Speedway example is close to homes, and this is a much more commercial application. I think any time that there's a monitor and you have advertisements, it's the same as the Speedway situation, that there are going to be advertisements for any sports channel or something that might be going on. So I'm not sure how that's viewed by the ordinance. I really support this business. I'm excited to have you here. And, I may have to learn how to play golf. This might carry me over the edge, so.
We can teach you.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, the motion before us is to acknowledge receipt of the memo, moved by Gearbach, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Now, we have...
I'll move the motion, but I want to borrow out of the Planning Commission's motion that identifies the type of land use. The current one does just a special land use for 1345. In the motion that came from Planning, it says to approve the special land use to allow indoor recreation business at 1345. I think that's appropriate.
So it's been moved by Gearbach.
Second.
Seconded by CO. We need to get the exact phrasing.
To approve the special land use to allow indoor recreation use for 1345 East Michigan Avenue.
Business, actually.
Oh, indoor recreation business at 1345 East Michigan Avenue.
Okay, Mr. Gearbach?
Yes.
Mr. CO?
Yes.
Discussion, further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. We move now to new business. Item 17-105, grant agreement for new voting equipment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the letter from County Clerk Kestenbaum to approve or not approve the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, grant agreement, and to authorize or not authorize Clerk Royal as the signatory on the agreement upon review and approval of the city attorney.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and to authorize.
Second. It's been moved by Gearbach, seconded by McClelland? Yes? To acknowledge, to approve, and to authorize. Discussion. Mr. Seal.
I guess this might be for Clerk Royal. With all the discussion we've had in the press recently about other foreign governments attempting to hack into voting, goes on at all levels in our nation. These are networked, are they not?
Yes.
So how susceptible are they to hacking? Do you know?
I don't know.
Hopefully, the FBI is going to answer that question for us.
I have a question as well.
Ms. Mitchell.
Could I just have clarification, Ms. Royal? Thank you so much for your memo. I'm looking at the third paragraph, and it says, while the grant is providing a majority of election equipment the clerk's office has purchased. Is that talking about the county clerk or our clerk's office?
No, our clerk's office,
Okay.
because we had put some money aside for these voting equipments, but we
Okay.
have used some of that money for other items to make our election process that much smoother.
Okay.
I just wanted you to be aware of what we were doing.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Seal.
I do have one other question, I'm sorry. Will our voters see much of a change in the format that they've gotten used to with coloring in the little ovals?
No, that will pretty much stay the same. It's the difference of when you go to place your ballot into the new machine. The one that they're looking at, and I don't know all the specifications, but the one I used actually gave you like a receipt showing you that you voted, and it gave you a little sample of your ballot as you took it. So I'm assuming that's what we're getting. Amy's at the clerk's conference this week, so we'll know more when she gets back.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. Gerbach, do you want to go first?
Oh, I was just going to mention, there was an
sorry.
article in M Live that mentioned that they were going to do away with the ovals and have check marks instead, or X's, something like that. So,
And my question was, on page 3 of the accompanying paperwork, under testing, acceptance, and payment, it says, successful acceptance testing of the voting system shall be completed within 10 business days from the date of delivery. So is that our office that is doing the testing, or is that the county, when, is the county clerk going to do all the testing?
The county is doing it, yes, but they're asking the clerks to come in and help, which is good because we want to use the machines.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes, Ms. Dillon.
When do you anticipate having these online?
Before the November election.
Okay. And then my other one is, some communities are getting spare tabulators, but we've zeroed ours out, so we're not getting a spare, is that just?
We will have the spare, because we will have the AV count board, one that we don't use unless there's a presidential election. We had looked at getting an extra one in case we had to put in a new precinct, but before we would add a new precinct, we would reallocate the 3 precincts we have. So we decided not to get the other one because we would have to pay for that one.
Okay.
And we didn't want to pay for it.
And what are the ADA devices?
Those are the American Disability Acts. Those are the ones you can listen to. They will tell you what's on the ballot, so if you can't see, and they also have the raised lettering for blind, or braille. There we go. And the SIP puff, so that you can answer through SIP puff if you are quadriplegic.
Okay. So do we not have are we purchasing 2 more of those? Is that?
Those are part of the grant. We will get 2.
So we get them automatically?
Yes.
Okay. Do we currently have anything like that?
We do.
We do? Okay. I know that we have the Braille ones and we have the hearing ones. I didn't know we had the puff ones. Awesome. Thank you very much.
That's it for you, Ms. Dillon?
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded to acknowledge, to approve, and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item is item 17-06, purchase of staff cars in the fiscal year 2018 budget. Mr. Fordyce, would you like to? We need a motion first, sorry. So this will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 14, 2017 memo from DPW Director Fordyce to approve or not approve the purchase of two 2017 Ford Focus SE 5-door hatchbacks from Signature Ford of Owasso, Michigan, in the amount of $31,668.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
I'll second.
Moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. Mr. Fordyce, now you're on.
Thank you. Over the past year, we have had to take two vehicles offline due to basically their age and condition of the chassis. We took the city superintendent's vehicle offline, and the previous detective vehicle took that one offline as well. Those are being prepared to be auctioned for parts. So in the FY18 budget, we included $32,000 for not direct replacement of those vehicles, but replacement of them in terms of our overall vehicle stock. We've done a lot of shuffling around right now, and we've taken advantage of the lack of a code enforcement officer. We've shifted that vehicle to the city superintendent. We had, when we purchased the Explorer police vehicle, we then moved one of the Tahoes to the detective position, which has now been moved to the code enforcement position. So we're lacking a detective vehicle at the moment. Another convenient gap in staffing, we're lacking a detective at the moment. So it's kind of, we've been shuffling vehicles around quite a bit, and would like to purchase these two vehicles, very inexpensive vehicles in the grand scheme of things, I believe these would be assigned to the code enforcement officer, potentially freeing up the Tahoe back to the police department and the building inspector.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you over the rain. So one's going to the code enforcement officer and?
The building inspector.
The building, okay, thank you.
If I could.
Yes, go ahead.
And since the other plan too is it'll be utilized as staff with, for instance, the code enforcement officer's not using it because they're part-time, 25 hours a week, and one of those 5-hour shifts would be on the weekend. So right now we have one staff car that floats with assessing and IT and anybody else, and some folks do use their own vehicles to do official duties, whether it's going to the bank, whether it's going to the post office and the like. So.
And given the age and make of that vehicle, the floating city staff vehicle, I expect that one will be coming offline in the next year or so as well.
Mr. Seal.
What were the years of the two Tauruses that were scrapped out for parts?
I think it's a 2001 and a 2003.
So they had plenty of use.
Yeah. Yeah, we keep vehicles around for a very long time. We do have a full-time mechanic, and we do regular maintenance on them and get as much out of them as we can. So typically, we don't get rid of a passenger vehicle until it's in the 12 to 15-year-old range.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Gearba.
We have a new police car coming up. Maybe you've already answered this question, but I may have missed it. We're getting a new police car in the fleet, right? In the rotation?
Yes, in the FY18 budget, yeah.
Okay. What happens to the old one?
It will be repurposed, and that's been kind of our process for years. A vehicle will be a police vehicle, a cruiser, for 4 to 5 years, and then it'll move to a less intensive purpose. So with this one and with the age of the city staff car, the floating one, I suspect it'll be part of that rotation of things that, we'll use that vehicle to redistribute so that we have a newer floating staff vehicle.
So we need to buy 2 this year in order to make sure that we have appropriate cars for individuals to use.
Yeah, I think buying 2 will put us in the best position to be ready for the next one that, conditions out of service. And then with the new police cruiser coming in and freeing up a Tahoe, then we should be pretty well covered.
So I do have one question. It's incumbent on me as a member of the Environmental Commission to ask if alternative fuel vehicles were considered at all, since these seem to be vehicles that are used mostly locally.
Right.
Electric, for example, might be an ideal solution.
So within what the MyDeal system offers, they do have a hybrid vehicle in this general ballpark
I
of
saw
size.
that on the list.
And it's $10,000 more. And they don't offer any electric ones, but I took a look at, there is an electric version of this vehicle that I'm proposing, and its MSRP anyway is, again, $10,000 more. So while we need these vehicles and we need to get people around to, various job sites throughout the city, we don't go that far. So in some ways that's ideal for an electric vehicle, but it also makes that payback period, and that's not the ultimate evaluator of this type of purchase, but it does, because we aren't covering that many miles, it would take a long time to save $10,000 worth of gas.
Okay. Well, there are also
There are
reduced maintenance costs as well, but we won't pursue that any further. Okay, thank you. Thank you for considering that. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Dillon.
These are little teeny cars. Do these people need to carry stuff around? Like the building inspector?
So they're hatchbacks. So there are smaller vehicles. I wouldn't call them teeny tiny. I forget
But they're not going to really hold a ladder.
what classification.
Doesn't carry them.
He doesn't carry a ladder?
No.
They use them on site. They have
Some-
on-site ladders.
Sometimes the code enforcement officer in the past has carried a step ladder to help with removal of some signs that are placed up high on utility poles. But with the hatch and the fold-down seats, you can fit a smaller ladder there. Like you could probably fit a 5-foot ladder in there without trouble. And that's why, well, 2 reasons I went with the hatchback versus the sedan. One is to increase cargo flexibility, and for whatever reason, the hatchback is cheaper than the sedan in the MyDeal pricing. So.
Do you gauge how many miles per year these cars are driven?
We don't have enough data on a part-time code officer to estimate how many miles that would be driven.
Just trying to estimate the life of the car.
Yeah, it's not the miles, it's the years. I don't think we've ever had a car that mileage was the issue that took it out of service. It's just age and rust.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. The motion has been moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. Is there a subsequent motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mitchell and seconded by CO to approve. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fordyce. Next item is number 17108, Resolution 17108 to authorize issuance of general obligation limited tax and refunding bonds. This will be a motion to approve or not approve the Resolution 17-108 to authorize issuance of general obligation limited tax and refunding bonds, Series 2017. Ms. Bennett, I believe we've discussed this at a work meeting, but it might be beneficial for all of us if you refreshed our memories.
We've had a lot on our
you.
minds tonight. I will do a quick refresher. Our timing's a little off. I was posing this to do this when the rain came in. So as you may recall, on May 15th, we met with our financial advisor from Baird, Warren Kramer from Baird, came out and he discussed with us an opportunity that had presented itself where we could actually take some of our sewage bonds from 2007, I believe, and do a refund on that and roll that in with the new monies that we were in need of for the rec bond. So before you tonight, you have, and by doing that, we had a potential savings of about $54,000. In the savings from that other one, and also the debt issuance of the new rec center bonds. So before you tonight is a resolution to authorize for us to go out for that bond. It's a little bit higher, but it's not to exceed that. So that will include the new money that is needed for the rec center roof and any other maintenance issues. I think we're still coming up with that final dollar through May's, or do we have that dollar? I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, the RFP's out, so waiting for the bids to come back.
Okay, wasn't sure of the status on that. And then to refinance that sewage bond. So that's the issue that's before you tonight. That does not mean that we're going to borrow that full $3 million. That is just giving us, when we get all those numbers together, that will authorize us to do the next step in issuing the bonds.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? Ms. McClellan, Ms. Dillon.
1, 2, 3, 4. In the fifth whereas, it talks about possible replacement of the HVAC equipment. Didn't we kind of rule that out that we weren't, or is that still on the table?
We did, the review that we did says that it's in good shape and moving forward, so that it should last. But again, that I think was put in there just in case.
It's all-encompassing resolution.
Right. So I mean, it's similar to Mickey Joe's point about the amount. Hopefully, we don't have to issue that many, but it gives us that capacity.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. It has been moved by Mitchell and seconded by CO to approve. All those in favor signify.
We didn't actually
No.
have a motion.
We didn't?
No, that was the last motion.
Oh, sorry.
I move to approve Resolution 17-108.
Second, Mitchell.
Okay. I apologize.
I made my approach too early, I'm sorry. I screwed you up, Linda.
No,
Cheers prerogative.
It's okay. So it has been moved by CO and seconded by Mitchell to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right. We move now to item 17-109, staff appointments and contracts for fiscal year 18. This is a series of motions. Motion A will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 14, 2017 memo from City Manager Campbell regarding the annual non-union staff contracts.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbach to acknowledge receipt. Discussion or questions?
I will start. I thought we kind of last year after we were going through this, I thought we had decided that we were going to hold back until after evaluations were done. So has everybody actually received their yearly evaluations?
My apologies, I mean, I'm not aware of that. They haven't. We typically I do my department heads typically in July, but it's not ever been part of the procedure before. And again, my apologies, I don't recall that conversation. So, I mean, but this is typically the process that has been utilized for many years prior, well prior to me coming on board, and I'm working on my 10th year. So, I guess to your question, no, they haven't been done, but they're annual appointments, and again, going forward, as I think we talked briefly at the last council meeting about the current contracts. You can maintain them by not doing anything, but you can't change them unless you were to change what's being proposed. So I guess, again, staff's recommendation meaning my recommendation is to continue on as we have. This is, if I might, just elaborate a little bit on it's the same, essentially the same as what has been approved in the current collective bargaining units across the board. So it's a 2.5% COLA, steps, and if you're stepped out, in this case it would be eligible for the merit pay, which is at the sole discretion of the city manager to award or not award. And then similar to the bargaining units, they call it longevity versus merit, but it's all very, very similar with across the board. Again, even though that's one of our objectives, you may recall, when we do bargain, is we're trying to keep it steady with non-union and union across the board as best we can.
I understand that, but once again, we're giving raises before we're doing evaluations of employees. I don't see that as a standard operating procedure in any other business. I just don't feel comfortable with that at this point. I mean, I understand, it's different with the unions. That's just how that works out, but I do think that people should be reviewed prior to receiving raises.
Other discussion? Hearing none. It's been moved by Dillon and seconded by Gearbach to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion, ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next, Part B, will be a motion to approve or not approve the classification and compensation plan grid effective July 1, 2017 for fiscal year 18.
Move to approve.
It's been moved by CO,
Second.
seconded by McClelland to approve, correct, Mr. Seal?
So can you just clarify what it is that we are approving in this one? We are approving
There used to be a step grid, and then there's this, so.
Right, and that was,
The clerk row says this is the page that's labeled B in the upper left corner.
Okay.
Correct, Mr. Kim?
it is.
But isn't there supposed to be additional information? I just thought this was a multi.
There had been, and I thought it was included in the packet, the steps. There's a step grid as well. I thought Elle had included that when she gave that to the clerk's office. it shows the,
Says what on this,
it shows this,
It does.
the
the
grade.
step increase.
Well, it does
The
have.
steps are included
Sure,
in the chart,
right.
but there was are you saying there was an additional
Well, there's a
piece?
grid that just shows, and that doesn't have to be, but approved, but it just shows that, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then each of the steps.
It's on there.
But,
It's
well,
listed here, the
I think
grades.
there's another sheet. I may have missed that one.
it has all the relevant information, but this is just an overall, all the steps. Okay. But it does have all the relevant information specific to each of the individuals. Okay. Correct.
You're saying you're missing what each step
It's more of
correlates to?
right, it's just more of an informational.
Got it.
Other questions?
Just a couple.
Mr. Gearba.
Just for clarification for myself, the huge increase that I see for Eleanor, is that just because it's a half year compared to a full year?
Correct.
Then you see Justine's.
Right,
Yeah, I know, I saw the other ones, and I was just trying to make sure how the numbers played out in there.
Yes, that's correct.
I really don't want to vote no against this entire slate, because I feel there's some people on here that completely deserve what they're getting. As I have expressed before, I have a concern about our city superintendent, and I don't feel that he should be getting an increase at all this year, or a merit, because of my concerns. That's my opinion. As in terms of, sorry, that's just
I'm sorry,
my statement. That's just my statement I'm making at this point in time. I know there were some large projects, but there's been some significant mistakes and things that have been made, and I've been very concerned about performance, and that's particularly been an issue with me. So at that point, that's what I'm expressing.
I think that, I'm sorry if I may.
Ms. Mitchell, please.
I think that goes back to Ms. Dillon's statement about, nobody in the private sector has a raise before an evaluation. And I mean, if that's the company policy that they're automatic, it might be one thing, but, it does stand out, and I think we could certainly ask what flexibility we have, and if we need some time to think about this and have evaluations before we approve. I'd be interested to know what my peers think.
Mr. Campbell, what does the city, what do the city rules, city ordinances prescribe for us as a timeline here?
Well, I mean, this is the new, if nothing were approved, then per the agreement language, it would maintain status quo until sometime in the future, whatever time that is, to make those changes. So, I mean, again, this has been the procedure. I guess certainly with all due respect, to me, it feels like we're changing the rules in the middle of the game. Again, with all due respect, and nothing but respect, but it's difficult to move forward. I mean, from a staff perspective, if that's what council wanted to do, because we would have certainly have done that prior to. But again, this has been standard procedure since, again, like I said, well beyond before I ever came around. So a little bit difficult but again, the council has the prerogative to do what you all want to do. And like I said, if you wanted to say, well, we want to come back at a later time, but we're going to leave status quo, I certainly, I do have a concern for employee morale for sure, because whether they're unionized or ununionized, they're seeing their neighbors being approved, and so that is a concern of mine.
Mr. Seo, then Mr. Gearbach, Ms. McClelland also? Okay, Mr. Seo.
I guess the evaluation of these folks lies right now within the prerogative of the city manager, according to the way we've always done things. And we as a council, I think, evaluate the city manager. So I think if we feel that he's not doing the job appropriately, then we have argument with the city manager. But the city manager has brought this to us for our consideration and approval based on his best judgment, and I would support it.
Mr. Gearba.
I know there's two schools of thought to how you give a how you give salary increases. One, you do it based upon an evaluation, or you separate the two because they're, and I've gone through both examples. My issue is specific to one performance, and we used to, as we renewed the contracts, they were done individually. If that was more done that way, then I could deal with my concern at that point in time. My concern is I don't have an issue with the other salaries, just that one in particular. And I feel that's the only way to object to this is because they're presented all at one shot. That's the only way I can make my point clear. And that could be done as a separate motion, and then the rest of council could vote on it and make a decision on that one. The rest of them, at this point, I recommend take the city manager's recommendation. We are evaluating the city manager later, and his increase is not on here. I don't believe.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
That was my mistake.
It's item 3.
But your merit's not on here. You're on here, but your new salary rate is not on here. Correct?
The 2.5%.
2.5%.
The COLA, but one, I don't qualify for merit, and two, I feel kind of, I mean, that I would prefer that would come from council if at all. So I don't think I don't think it's proper for me to give myself a merit raise.
Yeah, and I thought that maybe my mistake. I was thinking in the past we'd done it that way.
Maybe it has been, but again, like I said, but as far as, this, again, this is the same procedures we've done for a long time.
Yeah, and I voted no 3 or 4 times too. So.
Sure, understood.
Ms. McClellan.
Yeah, I think there's some merit, so to speak, to doing reviews before we get to this process, but I don't necessarily think that I think that it should come up prior to the, I guess I don't, for morale reasons and for, I guess I agree with Mr. Campbell that, it's been done this way, and if we're going to change it, I feel like to be fair to the staff and to the process, that should come up prior to it coming to us. So for next year or for future going forward, then yes, I think, let's schedule the reviews, let's do all that process prior to this coming to us. But I think for this time, I don't think it's fair for...
Ms. Dillon.
This was brought up last year at the same time. So I'm just bringing that back, that I did mention this last year because I was very surprised about it. And I know it was also mentioned during Mr. Campbell's evaluation. I think we had talked about that also, just it being a timing issue. It's not a money issue, it's a timing issue. And so I just think that once again, it's just like the employee contract thing. This stuff is coming to us so late that we're in a position of, we don't have an option to make a choice. It's the severance agreement, again, of by the time it came to us, we were outside the window. And I don't know where that planning needs to come from so that we can better prepare in advance of this, so it's not brought to us at the dais.
If I might. Go, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to weigh in with a discussion point, or my point of view about this, is that if, like Mr. Gearba, I have experienced merit raises, and raises based on performance evaluations, and I've experienced cases where the two are separated. And there are serious pros and cons to both. So I would not necessarily advocate for either one over the other. I mean, So that's one point. The second point being that I am in favor of approving this at this point because this is the process as it's been practiced in the city for many years before any of us sat here. And to try to change it on the fly in a meeting seems irresponsible to me, I have to say. I would also suggest, I was going to suggest this when we get to Part E, that the question of the severance pay is one that we have brought up over the course of a number of years. I think, and I think that I'm in favor of reviewing that, and I think we need to review it early in the new fiscal year so that we have plenty of time to think about it and consider it and make the changes at a time when we are not overwhelmed by budget considerations, budget discussions, and we're not right up against the deadline of approving or not approving the staff compensation, classification and compensation questions. And we could very well, if we felt we wanted to discuss changing the order of raises and evaluations in time, that is another issue that we could take up. And I think it is incumbent upon us as council to decide that is our priority. We shouldn't feel we can sit back and wait for staff to bring this to us. I think we need to take the initiative on that. That's just my point of view. Mr. Campbell and then Mr. Seo.
Yeah, I was just going to add that certainly when an item is discussed, it's discussed, but just because it's discussed doesn't mean that it's official procedure. I mean, so just to Ms. Dillon's point about not getting things, council has not directed staff to make these changes. If that's what if council as a whole wants to change those procedures, absolutely, that we can do that. But until then, we continue those similar procedures, unless there's an issue that if staff deems that there's an issue, then we certainly bring that up. But otherwise, unless there's an official action taken by the majority of council, we're not going to make a change. So that's to that point. But if council wants to change how we do that, we're certainly always open to that and happy to oblige that.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Seo.
I'll pass, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mitchell.
So I think I would be interested in talking about bringing the issue with severance and the timing of compensation formally to council. I'd be interested in that. And I also just want to say, as somebody who studied organizational change and lives it and works in it, it's because the way we've always done things is not an acceptable thing to say anymore. That we have better technology, we have better processes, and it's okay to review what we're doing. And I want to state that that's my feeling, that change can be good, and I'm open to discussing it. So.
Ms. McClellan.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I think that is and I wouldn't be opposed to that, to looking at, changes going forward. I just don't think that we should be changing it on the fly as we go today. I just don't think that that's responsible. I don't think it's fair. I think it needs to go through that process, and I think it needs to go through the process with all of us to kind of figure out what that's going to look like in the future. And I'm certainly in favor of doing that, and I think it makes sense to do that. I just don't think it makes sense to do it right here, right now.
Mr. Campbell.
I was just going to add, I believe that because that came up maybe a month or so ago, and or maybe two meetings ago, maybe. Anyway, I believe the mayor had suggested, and that was staff's understanding, that either second meeting or some in July or one of the meetings in August, council would entertain that discussion. That's my recollection.
Yes, please.
I do have that on council for the second meeting in August for the severance. Is that what it's considered? So I will ask the mayor if he wants to add that. Is that okay?
I think that would be very good.
Okay. Contracts and evaluations is what I'm, okay.
Any other discussion? Okay. We'll move to vote. It's been moved by CO and seconded by McClellan to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to item C. This will be a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution as submitted, appointing staff and setting their compensation for the period of July 1, 2017 through July 30th, 2018.
Move to approve and adopt.
It's been moved by CO to approve and adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by McClellan. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, it's been moved by CO, seconded by Ms. McClellan to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to item D. This will be a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution as submitted, appointing city officers for the period of July 1, 2017 through July 30th, 2018, to acknowledge receipt and reading of ordinance number 790, an ordinance to amend the Saline City Code fixing the current compensation of appointed officials, and to approve and adopt or not adopt said ordinance 790 as submitted. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Um,
Mitchell.
Yes. Approve and adopt.
Approve and adopt.
Acknowledge receipt and approve and adopt?
Approve and adopt.
Okay. It's moved by Mitchell. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion. Or second it for discussion.
Seconded by CO. So it's been seconded, moved by Mitchell and seconded by CO to approve and adopt, to acknowledge receipt, and to approve and adopt. Discussion.
What is
Mr. CO.
What is I'm confused somewhat by ordinance 790, an ordinance to amend the Saline City Code, fixing the current compensation of appointed officials. Is that the one that's on, I guess it's the page entitled ordinance number 790, correct? Okay. Never mind.
It's part of the charter. It's required under the charter that we adopt this each year.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded to approve and adopt, to acknowledge receipt, and to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Can we have a show of hands, please? All those who voted aye. 4, nay, 2. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Item E. This will be a motion to approve or not approve the employment contracts with appointed staff and officers for the period of July 1, 2017 through July 30th, 2018, and to authorize or not authorize the mayor, city clerk, and city manager to execute the employment contracts as submitted.
Move to approve and authorize.
Second, although you said July 30th, 2018, it should be June 30th.
Oh, sorry.
2018.
June 30th. Thank you. It's been moved by CO, seconded by McClellan to approve and to authorize. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Hands again, please. Approve? 4, nay, 2. Thank you. Ayes have it, the motion carries. Discussion. We move now to discussion, having had none so far this evening. First item on the discussion agenda is commission, committee, and task force reports from council members.
We have Parks Commission, the Green Thumb Award is or nominations are being accepted, and you'll see the signs coming out. I have two I have to go do tomorrow. Parks Commission also is meeting tomorrow, 6 o'clock at People's Park to kind of walk the park and discuss the parking lot situation there. And then we will have our formal meeting at 7 p.m. here at City Hall to discuss that. So if any members of the public would like to come and join us at the park or at the regular meeting, they are welcome, and actually would prefer them to come and give their thoughts and opinions. So I think that's it. Youth Council is on break for the summer, so we are looking forward to new students coming in and taking applications for commissioners, I think, and students for that as well. So,
Thank you. Mr. Gearbach.
Just touch base on Planning Commission. We had a preliminary site plan approval for Maple Coves, which is on the old Escott property. Discussion had gone back and forth on that, and they managed to hopefully comply with most of the aspects. They will probably be coming forward for a zoning request because of one setback in between buildings, but it may be more of an aesthetics things that they'll be looking at. And then the other thing is we had another special use permit or a special use request for another gym in the industrial park, so that'll be coming forward to us.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? I have two. The Arts and Culture Committee's Art Around Saline project received word this week or last week that there's been additional grant money that's come in and through the CTAP program, and Mr. Olson may want to say a few words about that later. And then for the Environmental Commission, the Saline Be Green Award nomination forms are now available online at the salinebegreen.com website. Look on the left-hand column and you'll find a link to the nomination forms. And if they are not already available at City Hall, paper copies of the form will be available at City Hall sometime soon if they're not already here. Reports and other announcements. Ms. Mitchell.
I just wanted to mention that the voting time is still open for the Green Thumb Award. As an active member of our Stone and Thistle Garden Club, it's something that we always enjoy seeing, and so people can go to the city website and do a search. I believe it comes up under the Parks Department, and you can even send an email and just list neighbors. My family likes to drive around and who are we going to support? So I would encourage that fun activity and recognition of our neighbors who work hard to make this city beautiful.
Any other? Yes, Ms. McClellan.
just wanted to comment that the Summer Music Series kicked off on Thursday, and there'll be another one this Thursday on the south side. Is that correct, John? North side? Okay, so on the north. Okay, north side on Thursday. And also we did ribbon cutting for the student art banners. So we had about maybe 30 kids down there doing the ribbon cutting for their artwork. So it was exciting.
Yeah, they look great.
One last
Yes.
promo. The Historical Society will be having our 4th of July celebration on July 1st from 11, that's a Saturday, from 11 till 3. I encourage everyone to come out. It's a great way to recognize our country at that aspect, and we had a good turnout last year. Fortunately, we won't have a horse and carriage. The individual couldn't do it this year, but we will have tractors and other items for people to have fun on.
Where?
Ms. McClellan.
Jack wanted to know where it was.
Oh, sorry, Saline Depot.
And one other thing for me too, that the Saline Farmers Market tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, or 3 to 7 at Rensselaer Farm. It's awesome. You got to go down there. It's so cool. I'm so excited that it's at Rensselaer Farm. So you'll probably see me on Facebook getting really excited.
I understand. I talked with the market manager on Saturday at the farmers market, and the comments have been very, very, very positive about that. I'll note our group of exchange students from the high school arrived safely in Germany today for their visit in our sister city, Lindenberg, and they are accompanied by former council member Jim Roth and also by one of the parents, Claudia Hambleton. So send them good vibes. Anything else? Okay. wastewater treatment plant, Mr. Skull, if you wanted to say anything else. The mayor asked me also to assure everyone the wastewater treatment plant will continue to be a discussion item on, you look thrilled, on future city council agendas. So this will continue to be a topic.
Well, as far as odor complaints, we've had about 23. That number they kind of drift in, so there may be more. With the hot weather, we got more additional complaints. The new filters one of them has crashed again. They should be back online tomorrow. They're finished except for one part. Then they will retrofit the one that's running with the newer equipment. So they should be done by Tuesday. Everything else I think we've covered.
Good. Any questions for Mr. Skull? Ms. Dillon?
What is the time frame for those 23 calls? Is that since our last council meeting? Is that per week, per day?
Yeah, that was since the last meeting, with 14th. I guess it wasn't quite the last meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. So the next item is the city manager evaluation form. As we noted at the beginning of the meeting, you have a draft of that form on at your seat. And Ms. Dillon will talk to us a little bit about the form, and then I have information about the timeline for the process.
This came out of past evaluations for those that are newer to the process. The form that we had been using, there were several questions on it that we really were out of our scope to answer. They were more from the staff side. And so we decided that we wanted to kind of tweak the evaluation form. So what I've worked with the city clerk and Mr. Campbell, secretary, and basically we took the shell form that the City Manager Association uses as their sample as a base. And then we looked at, 10, 12, countless other ones, and we kind of picked and chose things from there and put them into this form. And right now, it's just going to be a matter of if we feel as though it is adequate for what we want. It is lengthy, I will be the first to say that. And so it's something we'll definitely have to consider. And it's a rating scale, a 5 up to, or down to a 1. And then it does an average. There's just some mathematical equations. There is one issue that we briefly discussed as a council at one point in time when we started this process, which is, did we want the evaluation to work from both sides? Meaning that council would evaluate the city manager and then his department heads would also evaluate him. Because there are things, as far as staffing and supervision, that for the most part, we're really out of our scope. And we don't really have an adequate rating for that. So it's something we would have to consider if we wanted to do that. So at this point, I think what we're looking for is some immediate feedback.
Right.
And I think this is where Mrs. Terhar will kind of let you know what the mayor's time frame is.
Right. So the target date, the city manager's evaluation date has been set for July, the July 17th meeting. And as has been the case in the past, Mr. Campbell has requested that be in a closed session. So in order to achieve that date, there are some things we need to do as council members right away, which is review this form and send comments, any comments, questions, as soon as possible like tomorrow would be good, but sometime this week. To Ms. Dillon, Clerk Royal, Administrative Assistant Getchman, and also to the mayor. So any comments, questions, suggestions about this should be sent to the four of them. And then a number of things need to happen between then and when we receive the form for our own use to do our evaluations at the July 3rd meeting. And the things that need to happen in between is any updates that would happen to the form, review by city attorney staff, an opportunity for Ms. Dillon, Clerk Royal, and Administrative Assistant Getchman to meet with Mr. Campbell and just walk through the form and to acquaint him with the new form. And so speed for receiving our comments is really important, so those other things can happen before we receive the form to use on July 3rd. And then on July 17th, and one more piece in there. So we'll receive the forms on July 3rd, and we're going to be asked to return them to Administrative Assistant Getchman by the 10th of July, because you may recall, we agreed that there would be a compilation of the results of the review that we would receive before we meet with the city manager on the 17th for the evaluation session.
I'm sorry, I wanted to mention that also, is that we did take from, the way that we evaluate the fire chief is that all of the evaluations are given to one person and they're entered. So people don't feel as though it's confrontational, and there is no direct correlation between a response to a person. So there is some anonymity to it. There is opportunities beyond the rating scale for write-in comments.
So this is the grid that
Yes,
accompanied the
so
form.
there
And
is
this
a grid with it,
and
which
this
you're
is-
not filling in. That's just to let you know that that would be where the scoring would go.
Okay. Is that clear? So that's a lot of detail, but the bottom line for us right now is review the form and get comments back this week, if at all possible.
I'm sorry, quick
Yes.
question. Who is tabulating the responses?
L.
Ellis.
Getchman.
Okay.
Mr. Campbell's administrative assistant.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. And then finally, pedestrian safety downtown. And this is possibly Mr. Fordyce, also Mr. Campbell. This is a question that was raised to us most recently. It's been a concern, but was raised to us most recently by Ms. Mitchell. So, and we have received a photo that accompanies this discussion. Mr. Fordyce.
So I don't remember when the owner of that adjacent business first contacted me, but some time ago contacted me regarding visibility at that corner. In the downtown area, the buildings are built very close to the property line, and there's many good reasons for that and many benefits of that. But when you have a driveway, it can decrease visibility around the corner of that building. So at the exit of parking lot 1, the corner of the downtown dojo is right there. There's a sidewalk right in front of it, and then you've got drivers coming out of the parking lot, people coming down the sidewalk. So there's a little bit of there's not a lot of visible warning for either the driver or the pedestrian to know what's coming around that corner. So when we were first contacted, at that time there was just one small stop sign. So we placed an additional larger stop sign on the left side of the intersection and then replaced the small one. There's very limited room on the right as you're exiting there for signage. Replaced that with a fresh, bright, reflective one, and placed a stop bar there. And these are all things that are unusual on driveways. Most driveways have no traffic markings whatsoever. You're not required to have a stop sign on a driveway. You're not required to have a stop bar or any kind of marking when you're exiting a parking lot or a home or a business onto a thoroughfare. There is I'm not sure what the right term is, but the law says you are supposed to stop when you're leaving a driveway before entering into a roadway. So we've added, so there's those 3 devices there now, 2 stop signs and a stop bar. And the photographic representation you have there is a proposal for some additional signage there. We all know that drivers these days seem to not pay as much attention as they used to. So hopefully there with some additional signage, including, I really like the look on there, and the double arrows pointing in the direction that a driver should look when crossing a sidewalk. And then reminding, technically this isn't a crosswalk, but that sign is a standardized sign, and it gets the message across. There are going to be people here, and you should stop for them. So those are inexpensive, simple fixes. Some downsides to that proposal, you might see the little vestiges of our parking map behind one of the signs on the left there. That would have to find a new location. And the additional signs on the right, while they provide information and encouragement to stop and look and yield to pedestrians, they also block the view a little bit more. So we've already got a bad visibility situation. These signage could conceivably make it a little bit worse. Some other ideas not shown in there is pedestrian signage. So on the sidewalk, as you're southbound, there's pedestrian scale signage available. We can put a stop sign there and the look plaque suggesting to the pedestrians and bicyclists coming down there that, hey, there's an upcoming conflict point that may not be terribly visible to you as you're passing in front of this building. They do have pedestrian signs designed for non-motorized pathways that provide advanced warning of intersections and driveways, but they're very schematic, and I don't think they're particularly clear and understandable. So I think a stop sign and a look, or we could do a custom sign, just something that says look for vehicles, watch for vehicles, driveway ahead, any kind of verbiage like that. If we want to keep going further, we can do additional things on the pavement in the parking lot. We can, put a stencil of the word stop there before the stop bar. So there are a lot of options, but they're all unusual in a driveway environment.
So, Mr. Campbell, are we looking for guidance tonight, or consensus, or just general?
Well, the mayor had asked that this be put on, and so that's kind of what we're doing. We wanted to obviously provide solutions to the issue as well, and so I mean, certainly if you all have other thoughts or comments, concerns, we're happy to listen.
I think I saw Ms. McClellan, Ms. Dillon, Mr. Seoff.
You mentioned there's like the stop. Is there any, on the pavement, is there any precedent for doing some kind of a hashing or something like that on the sidewalk portion for the pedestrian?
We certainly could do that. I mean, we could paint that as a crosswalk. It is unusual. Typical downtown arrangements for a driveway, for a pedestrian safety, the recommendation is to continue the sidewalk through the driveway, and we've done that. Right. So that the sidewalk maintains its grade and its material through the drive approach. That's That's kind of the standard best practice for
Okay.
downtown driveways. That's not to say we couldn't paint it as a crosswalk. I don't think that would be,
Yeah,
it would look a little weird.
Yeah.
I don't think it would confuse anybody, but it's just a
kind
little
of be
odd.
aware.
Yeah.
I am kind of concerned that the one on the right will make things worse than it will.
Yeah.
Unless it's really low or something. I mean, just because it's already a blind corner really for the driver, and they're they're not paying attention. I mean, I think something should be done. I'm concerned just generally with traffic downtown. I know there was an incident a week or two ago where somebody was not turning and someone got honked at, and then they backed up and they just about backed into a pedestrian. So, I mean, I think it's just downtown in general, you just need to be making sure that you're paying attention and not trusting necessarily that
Cars are
the
gonna
driver's
stop.
going to do what they said they're going
Right.
to do, or the pedestrian's going to do what they said they're going to do.
Right.
So.
Anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Ms. Dillon?
Okay, I frequent this exit often, and it is nearly impossible to see around that building. And I do think that putting more signage there is going to make it worse, because depending on the type of vehicle you have, you've got to really you're into the sidewalk to just see.
Yep.
And if the door to the dojo is open, it pushes people out even further. And it is a bad situation. I would like to see possibly a stencil stop on the roadway there, but then possibly maybe the bumpy sidewalks that we use at the ramps, the 80-day.
Excuse me. Sorry.
What are you doing?
To warn the pedestrians. Could we do something like that, the bumpy sidewalks? The ramps?
Yeah.
Just so that those people that are either visually impaired or not paying attention are they're going to know there's something there. They're going to feel a difference, whether they're on a bike
Right.
or they're walking.
I don't think we can do that.
We can't do that there?
I think those are very specifically limited to
Inquires.
crossing streets.
Okay.
Then that's what that surface means to a
Okay.
visually impaired person, that you are about to enter a street. And this is not a street we're dealing with.
Okay. I would definitely be in favor of some sort of signage there. And I know that the dojo owner has been very aware, and he's the one that's brought this to our attention on numerous occasions. But he does put a lot of materials on his windows that sometimes, and it is his business, it is his choice to do that, but it does impair if you were to try to set back. And like I've gone where you try to
Try
get
to
way back here and sort of look
through the
through his
window.
windows. You still have a big blind spot.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I definitely think that something should be done about it. The other thing that I've noticed is, and it's not really related to this, but it is in a way, is oversized trucks taking the turn off of Michigan Avenue onto North Ann Arbor Street and just about taking out the light poles and everything along the way. There was one that rode the curb for a good 30 feet the other day. I don't know whether he felt as though because there was no cars there. I bring that to your attention because when there are cars parked there, it's another blind spot. When there's cars parked over here,
Okay.
there's another blind spot to people
It's hard to see the
that
left.
way.
Yeah.
And so I think people are focusing their attention on seeing around those cars and not around the building.
Is that it?
That's it, thank you.
Mr. Seal?
In Europe, where there are no shortage of blind corners, they use a lot of mirrors.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just gonna.
So I looked for some guidance on placement of mirrors in the right-of-way, and I didn't really find any. So it's not prohibited, it's not specifically allowed. The layout there, I'm not, when you look, there's just that tiny little piece of green where we could put a post and a mirror there, and that may be enough, I don't know.
either side of the intersection, it looks like you know, there's enough greenery there. You could put a mirror.
A concave mirror, yeah. It's one of the possibilities that we've looked at.
They're very effective when people get used to using them at a blind corner.
Yeah. So I mean, my understanding of the situation is you're exiting the parking lot, it's to the north that you need to be able to see up that sidewalk.
But if you get a
and-
nice
and put it,
concave mirror up there,
Yeah.
you can see a long way down the sidewalk.
okay. It seemed, yeah. So that's something that I've looked at a little bit. Haven't made any conclusions on that one.
I have those little small concave mirrors on my rearview mirrors exterior.
Yeah, I have those too.
And I've gotten used to using those to great effect.
Yeah. Yep. So that is one of the other possibilities that we're looking at.
Anything additional, Mr. Seal?
No.
Okay. Well, I would just, Ms.
Unless you're
McClellan.
gonna- go ahead,
Oh, well,
you can add yours.
Okay. Well, I would like to see a little more thought about some sort of signal for the pedestrian, you know, like if you go up, what is it, Laura Road, where there's the bike path that has the little stop
Stop sign,
signs
yeah.
for the, I'm sure it's more for bicyclists than pedestrians.
Yeah.
But something like that. Figuring out the best way to make drivers more alert, I think, is only half of the question, or half of the problem, or half of the opportunity, however you want to say it.
Yep.
So if, I don't know, maybe a little stop sign or the look with the arrows, or there may be other possibilities, but I would like to see something warning pedestrians as well.
Yeah, I think a pedestrian scale sign for southbound pedestrians there makes a lot of sense.
Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was any private or public demonstration of or example of like having a physical crossbar that comes down and lets cars through. I mean, obviously, you see that mostly in parking structures or paid parking lots, but
Yeah.
something that comes down, you know, you just have to wait for it to go up before you can go through.
Certainly, we've never done anything like that. And I
know.
personally haven't seen one that's done for this purpose, but it's an interesting idea. I mean, that would, you know, it'd be a significant price tag along with that.
Sure.
But, and I don't know how you would, I mean, it would make people stop, but I don't know how that you would make the bar going up mean something, you know?
True.
The bar going, you know, just the bar going up.
Stick at a
You would have to have a
bicyclist coming down
sensor
the
or
sidewalk.
something, yeah,
Yeah.
some sensor or something, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be crazy expensive.
Ms. McClellan? Sorry, Ms. Mitchell?
So I brought this before City Council after hearing about an incident for members of the audience. There was a child on a bike, and a car hit the bike, and luckily, only the front tire was hit. And for full disclosure, a week ago, I actually joined this exercise place, so, you know, I just want to be transparent about everything. And I'm interested in the talk about mirrors, and I wonder, would the mirrors be better for pedestrians or drivers, or would we do one for both?
It would just be one mirror that
Would serve both?
Yeah, it would bend around the corner.
I'm forgetting my physics, I appreciate that reminder. So one mirror could serve both?
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay.
So if the driver can see a pedestrian, then the pedestrian can see the driver.
Okay. So can we assume that we would like to have Mr. Fordes come back with more ideas at a future time? Okay? Okay.
Do we have a time frame?
Well, I was going to say,
Go ahead, Mr. Campbell, yes,
I was
please.
just going to, I mean, you know, I think, Jeff, I mean, I think we've got some direction that, I mean, I think we should look at that mirror.
Yep.
Look at the mirror and look at the some sort of stop or some signage for the pedestrians. We could potentially put along the left side, the additional signage.
Right. And I think putting the look on the right side would not obscure vision too much.
Unless council is not in agreement, that's what we will proceed with putting those up, making those improvements, and then we'll report back to you? Does that work?
Action instead of discussion sounds
Yeah.
good to me.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Fordyce. We come to our second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council on any topic. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess. Our city council, we have a strong council form of government, not a strong manager form of government. And when it was talked about, we haven't done it that way. I do want to say I served 22 years on the Saline City Council, and yes, the council was involved in comments, in input, and they should be involved prior to raises, prior to merits. It appears the way the 2,000 or 1,000 merits go, it's at the pleasure of the manager, it appears to me. I think that the council should be involved as they are in the public and they hear comments on staff, good questions or whatever, and they can bring this to the manager, and then the manager can relay, but it is a council decision. It is, as I said, it is your obligation to know what's going on. The manager serves the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Other public comments? Of course.
Some of it's on the fly. Some of it has been answered. But first, I wanted to publicly thank Dave Horney of Tetra Tech. I'm sorry the guys left, because I have 2 or 3 questions that Bob Skull can probably. Where did he go? Okay. Dave Horney has been out to our residents sometimes twice a day. I don't call him at 3 in the morning. The odors permeate our house at this point, but I just wanted to publicly have him recognized and have council and city officials know that. He's been conscientious, he's been very pleasant. He has, I think, followed instructions not to bias the people that he's talking with who have called in the odor complaints. And I think other citizens ought to know that. And I did tell Dave today when he was out that I was going to do this because I assumed he would not be here himself. So, but I do have a couple of questions. One is probably critical for the odor business, is whether the data that's being collected for the wind and the temperature and the scale of 0 to 5, if that's being correlated to what's happening at the plant. It feels like there's the communications there's disconnects periodically. So that was one question that I had. Another question I have, and it's a little bit minor compared to the bigger needs that we have in the community, is the fire hydrant on our extension is a pink gray at this point, and the chipped paint is, I mean, there's not much left. And when the guys came out to flush it, it had not been flushed for several years, by the way, but it was flushed this spring, and it took 2 guys with their wrenches with their stomping on their wrenches to actually get the bolt freed up to be able to open the fire hydrant, and that's a safety issue as far as I'm concerned. And I wanted to also thank council. You work very hard. You spend a lot of hours prior to appearing before the public, and the city officials as well. But I need to end and express general concerns that I really feel that our priorities have somehow gotten upside down, and that's what it feels like, and that's just a citizen's comment, so I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ruff. City Manager Campbell will gather information about your questions, and someone will be in touch with you with some information about them. Thank you.
Matt Rockwell. I just want to know where our city budget is at. I got a tax form in the mail, or my mom and dad did, saying that the city only has $5,000 or $5 million. Where did that $5 million go? If we don't have a budget to run on of where that $5 million goes, then what are we living in a city for? Because I saw a crash this weekend and someone told me that too. And I'm like, so we're paying for a half of a police department that does not even need to be here. So I think we need to really evaluate where our money goes.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. Any other public comments? Mr. Olson.
John Olson, Saline Area Chamber of Commerce. It's past my bedtime, so hopefully I remember what I wanted to say. Well, as you know, we're part of CTAP, and CTAP is made up of the city, schools, Main Street, and the chamber. And we apply for a grant each year from the CVB, and I just got the check today, so we can begin. One of our projects is historic banners, which we hope to depict Saline's history through time in the form of banners. We want to rework some walking maps that we have had created in the past and they need updating. And then we plan for 4 additional art pieces as part of the art walk. So I guess that makes a total of 8 that will go out for that. But that is official and can begin now.
Great news. Thank you very much, Mr. Olson. Any other public comment? Good note to end on. Is there any other business to come before the Saline City Council? Okay, I'll remind you, upcoming meetings on July 3rd, possibly a work meeting? No. The work meeting, no work meeting on July 3rd. Regular meeting at 7:30. And then on July 17th, a work meeting at 6:30 to discuss 425 agreement with Saline Township, and regular meeting at 7:30. Can I have a motion to adjourn at 10:46 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. We are adjourned.